This boy was supposed to be nothing more than the son of a poor farmer. But after becoming a mage's disciple, Ian Raven starts learning magic at a speed that even his master can't ignore. First, he spends 7 years mastering the language needed to communicate with magic. Then his real training begins. His master throws him from a high place, forcing him to hear the voice of the wind before he hits the ground. Ian succeeds and awakens wind magic. After that, he is nearly drowned to learn water, frozen to learn ice, and placed before raging flames to master fire. But when earth magic refuses to answer him, Ian discovers something even more ridiculous. His mysterious status window contains bonus points that can increase his magic proficiency. With one upgrade, he suddenly understands the earth as well. And just when Ian thinks his training is over, another voice whispers from inside the darkness. Somehow, this beginner mage has awakened not only multiple elements, but the extremely rare shadow magic too. Even his own master is left stunned. So how did a farmer's son become this abnormal? Our guy was just a normal dude who had received his university acceptance letter, but before he could even celebrate, Truck-kun struck and gave him an instant death, ending his dream of having the sweetest girlfriend when he got to campus. When our guy finally opens his eyes, he has been reborn in a fantasy world as Ian Raven, but instead of being born into a noble family, he is born as the son of a lowly farmer. To make it worse for him, he was born with black hair, and his family is dirt poor. Some years later, his parents and 2 older brothers went out to hustle, leaving him and his junior sister to wander around in search of food. However, kids of his age usually stay away from him because of his black hair, and Ian is left groaning in frustration as to why he has to be reborn into such a trashy situation. Suddenly, a status window appears before him, and just as he is about to get his hopes up that something good is going to come out of it, the system crushes his hope, telling him that he is a nobody. However, Ian isn't entirely surprised since he wasn't expecting something great in the first place. He was born the son of a farmer and has no dream of being anything other than being a farmer. Nonetheless, he is confident that he could actually succeed in anything else as long as he studies. This leaves him wondering if there is anywhere in the world that would take him in. After feeding his sister a bunch of roasted fish, he suggests that they go get dessert. They step into the woods where his sister starts munching on wild berries. She's enjoying herself when a scary beast appears in the distance. Before they could even move, the beast descended on them, and it turned out to be a giant bear. It roars at them, scaring them to their bones, but Ian grabs his sister and holds her close to try to protect her. Just as the beast is about to hurt them, a magical fire appears from behind, taking down the bear in one shot. Ian stares in curiosity as a lady in glasses appears on the scene, talking about how she might have gone a little overboard. The lady offers her greetings, asking Ian if she is in the Feldenberg territory. Ian confirms this, and the lady introduces herself, revealing that she is Eridus, a wandering mage. Ian is shocked when he hears this, since he knows mages to be powerful beings who appear on the battlefield wielding elegant skills and immense destructive power. Ian is left wondering why someone like this has come to a trash village like his. Eridus then reveals that she is looking for a black-haired kid who lives in the town. Since she is standing in front of one at the moment, she wants to know if there are any other black-haired boys besides Ian. Ian replies that he is the only black-haired boy in the territory, and Eridus concludes that she has the right person. Ian is shocked to hear this, as he doesn't even know what Eridus is talking about. Apparently, Eridus's master, the space-time mage, had told her to go to the territory to find the black-haired boy to make him her disciple, promising that good things would happen to her if she did. Since Eridus is standing in front of Ian at the moment, she is left wondering if all she has to do is take Ian in as her disciple. A lot is also going through Ian's head, like how mages are dangerous, but he believes that Eridus is quite kind. In addition, she was able to take down the bear in one hit, which shows how powerful she is. Just then, Ian asks Eridus about the magic she used earlier, and Eridus could see that Ian is actually curious to know about magic. Ian tells her that he's always believed that magic is scary, but seeing it with his own eyes makes him believe that it is quite amazing. Eridus then tells Ian that there is nothing special about it, assuring him that he can easily handle it if he learns. In fact, she lets Ian know that anyone can learn magic, and Ian is surprised to hear this. Ian is forced to ask if he can really learn to use magic, and Eridus says yes, saying that as long as he meets a good teacher, he can become a mage. Upon hearing this, Ian's dream flashes before his eyes, and the moment Eridus asks him if he would like to become her disciple, he wastes no time accepting the offer because his life is about to change. After getting permission from Ian's parents and the territory's lord, Eridus takes Ian away. Eridus tells Ian that he has to work hard for the opportunity he's been given, and Ian assures her that he won't waste it. To start his journey, Eridus dumps a big book in front of him. This is the basics of magic, which is learned in the Moronius language, and he has to learn it. As he starts reading the book, the status window displays his progress on the Moronius language. He steadily learns what he has to about the books, and once he is done with a chapter, another one is given to him by Eridus. After so long, Ian finally perfects the Meronius language, and the system informs him that he is capable of using the Archmage's official magical language. It basically took him 7 years to be able to do this, and Eridus tells him that this concludes his classroom studies, which means that they have to move on to the next step. The next thing Eridus does is to drop Ian from a high place, and as he falls, he screams in fear, asking his master if he is not moving way too fast with him. He reminds Eridus that all he's learned in the past couple of years is the Meronius language. Eridus then yells at the top of her voice, telling Ian to listen to the voice, but this is all confusing to Ian. He wonders what sort of voice he is supposed to listen to when he is falling from the sky, because all he can hear is the sound of the wind. Suddenly, a voice starts talking in his head, expressing its shock that a human is flying through the sky. Ian is shocked, but at the same time he figures out that this is the Meronius language. By listening to the voice and manipulating the wind around him, Ian acquires a new skill, which is wind magic. When he finally makes it to the ground after a near-death experience, his master makes fun of him while telling him about the mysteries of great nature. Eridus tells him that mages borrow the power of the great mysteries of nature by communicating with them, which is basically what magic is all about. Since he can now hear the voice of the wind, his master tells him that it is time for him to listen for the next mysterious voice. Ian assures her that he is ready for the experience, and Eridus tells him that his next challenge is the water. Ian is dumped into the water, and after almost drowning in the water, he is able to master water magic too. After this, Eridus tells him that what is left is ice magic, and Ian soon finds himself in an icy plain where he almost dies of cold. In no time, he learns this also, and Eridus commends him, telling him that his learning speed is quite incredible. However, Ian can't even answer since he is totally exhausted already. Without giving him time to rest, Eridus tells him that what he has to learn next is fire magic, and Ian almost pees his pants when he finds himself in front of a large fire. However, after a near-death experience, he also learns fire magic. With this, his master tells him that the last one he needs to learn is earth magic. Ian is sent into a cave, and as he navigates his way around, he hears a riddle in his head. Since he doesn't understand what was being said, he figures out that he lacks the aptitude for earth magic, and he has to gain more experience in other training. Just then, the status window appears in front of him, telling him that he has bonus skill points that he can use to increase his magic proficiency. Ian is surprised to find out that he can use the skill window, which basically makes him a cheat player in this world. Since this is the case, he decides to raise his earth magic since he doesn't even understand a word it's saying. The moment he does this, a bright light appears on the screen, and when everything settles down, he can finally hear the earth magic communicating with him. Ian is glad that he finally learned the earth magic, and he figures out that it is time to get out to tell his master that he's learned it. Just then, he uses his fire magic to light the torch in his hand to see his path. Suddenly, he hears a voice in his head telling him that he hates the light, and Ian is shocked. He asks if earth magic is the one talking to him, but the voice says no. The voice replies, telling him that it is the darkness. Moments later, Ian rushes out of the cave with excitement, telling his master that he succeeded. However, he didn't only learn earth magic, but also learned shadow magic from the darkness. Eridus is shocked when she hears this, as she can't believe that Ian just heard the voice of the frightened and shy darkness. Ian can see the shocking reaction on his master's face, and he asks her if she is fine. Eridus simply calls Ian's name, telling him that it is time to head down the mountain. Ian excitedly asks her where they are supposed to move to, but she replies that it is not what he thinks. Eridus tells him that what she means is that they have to part ways. She points in a certain direction, telling him that he has to go to Chronoleague to participate in the Spacetime Mage Conference. Eridus tells him that he will most likely meet the Spacetime Mage there if he is destined to master Spacetime magic. Ian is blown away when he hears this because he can't believe that he has to learn such incredible magic all of a sudden. Deep down, Eridus is willing to send him off because she knows that he has an innate affinity for the mysteries, and if her intuition is correct, Ian will surely be able to handle the power of time too. Once they are both ready to leave, Eridus tells Ian to meet her at Dronheim in 3 years. Ian then makes his way to the nearest town while thinking about the Spacetime Mage Conference. Even though his master dumped it on him all of a sudden, he doesn't mind since he is excited too. Just then, he hears a man putting out an announcement that he is willing to travel with anyone going north. Since the Spacetime Mage Conference is heading north and he is currently free, he figures out that he might try going there in the meantime. Later on, Ian and his fellow travelers heading north are seen camping for the night. The one leading the journey is Reek, who is the master of the Rabbitfoot Merchant Guild. Reek asks Ian if it is his first time heading north, and Ian says yes, revealing that he had some business that came up suddenly. When Reek hears this, he figures out that Ian doesn't know about the Dragon Mountains. Apparently in these mountains, drakes appear, and Reek asks Ian if he knows how to fight, or at least knows how to run. Ian replies that he is not really confident in either of the things he just said, while wondering why Reek is hugging him and getting all friendly out of nowhere. Reek is shocked when he hears this, and he tells Ian that he is pretty useless. He asks him what his profession is, and Ian nervously replies that he is a mage. Reek hears this and stands up in shock, asking Ian if he is serious about what he said. With Reek speaking loudly and expressing his shock, others get to hear this too. Even the mercenaries with them are left in shock. Ian notices the sudden change in everyone's expression, and he asks if there is a problem whatsoever. Reek tells him that it is nothing serious, but he starts offering to give Ian things. The mercenaries, on the other hand, start making fun of Ian for saying he is a mage. They don't want to believe this since he looks so scrawny, and they mock him, saying that if he claims that he is a mage, anyone can also say the same. Ian is wondering what is wrong with them when a blue-haired lady who is covering her head with a hood walks up to him. She tells Ian that if he is really a mage, he has to give the mercenaries a piece of his mind to shut them up. Ian asks her what she means by this, and she tells Ian that mercenaries like to look down on anyone, and it doesn't even matter if he is a mage or not. Basically, he has to show them his power to let them know that he is not gentle, so they can't look down on him. In fact, they will fear him and protect him if something happens. Ian figures out that she is actually right, but he doesn't know how he is supposed to do this. Basically, he has never gotten angry before, so he is confused in this situation. Just then, he spots one of the mercenaries spitting in his plate while using a leaf to rub it all over. Ian loses it, and just then, the ground starts to shake as if there were an earthquake. The dude is freaking out when Ian walks up to him, asking him why he is spitting on his plate. With sweat running down his face, he offers his apologies, bowing his head to Ian. He tells Ian that he only wanted to clean the plate, and Ian yells at him, saying he should have washed it with water instead. The dude nervously argues with him that water is dirty, and Ian asks him what he means by this. The dude replies that water has all sorts of things in it, like lime, mud, and parasites, so he can't wash a plate with water. He mentions that saliva is more hygienic than water, and the moment Ian hears this, he almost loses his mind. Ian cannot believe just how bad medieval hygiene standards are. Ian almost loses his cool as he uses his power to make the fire burn brighter. Ian finally speaks, telling the mercenaries to go draw some water at that instant. The dudes rush off to the stream to get water because they can see how pissed Ian is. Later that night, the mercenaries are seen searching through the woods. Apparently they are looking for the blue-haired lady, whom they call Kathy. Suddenly, they run into Kathy being kidnapped by some bandits, and before they can even react, they get shot with arrows. The mercenaries whip out their weapons, ready to fight the bandits, and in no time, a fierce battle ensues between them. The bandit leader, who is carrying Kathy, suddenly gets bitten by her, forcing him to drop her on the ground. Kathy picks herself up and dashes off away from the scene while the two groups are fighting each other. The bandit leader informs his underlings that their target has escaped, and he orders them to catch her. Meanwhile, Ian is having a peaceful sleep back in his tent when the darkness wakes him, warning him of the impending danger. Reek then rushes into the tent, telling him that something bad is happening. Meanwhile, the bandits have overwhelmed the mercenaries, cutting them down without mercy. Kathy finds herself hiding behind a tree, and she is scared that she is going to get caught if something doesn't happen at this rate. Suddenly, one of the bandits finds her where she is hiding, and he points his sword at her, screaming at her to get up if she doesn't want to lose her arms. Kathy freaks out because at this point there is no way out for her. The dude is about to harm her when he is suddenly sent flying into the distance. Kathy turns around to see who saved her, and it turns out to be Ian. Ian confidently tells her to follow him, and the rest of the travelers quickly join in. Just then, Ian commands the darkness to come down, blinding the bandits. The bandits freak out, lighting their torches, but this is still not enough for them. Meanwhile, Ian can actually see in the dark because he is using the shadow arts. He is leading them away when a bandit suddenly spots them, using his torch. He is about to cut Reek when Ian commands the fire he is holding to burn him. The fire rises aggressively, burning him down without mercy. The others see this, and fear creeps into their bodies. Ian believes that this will scare them away, but it turns out to be the opposite. The moment the bandit leader figures out that they are being attacked by a mage, he orders his men to go after him. Suddenly, a drake appears out of nowhere and eats up one of the bandits. Everyone else is left in shock when they see this, and even Ian couldn't believe his eyes at the terrifying presence of the beast. The drake comes face to face with the bandit captain, and without giving it a second thought, the dude dashes off. Ian and the others are left trembling in fear because a dragon just appeared out of nowhere. Even Ian doesn't know what to do, and he believes that this is the end of the road for them. Suddenly, the system informs him that he has witnessed a primeval mystery and he has acquired a new skill, the summoning arts. This is an ability that allows him to communicate with and summon mysterious life forms. Ian is basically confused by this, since he doesn't even know what it does. He doesn't want to believe that the drake standing in front of him is the same as the mysteries he's met in the past. Since this is the case, he decides to communicate with the drake. He calls out the drake, but the drake doesn't react to this. In fact, the Drake unleashes a terrifying roar that scares Ian and the travelers hiding behind him. However, Ian decides to stand strong, since he has never been betrayed by the mysteries before. He calls the Drake's name again while trying to communicate with it, telling it that he is a friend. However, the Drake still doesn't communicate back, even with all the hand gestures and all. The other travelers strongly believe in Ian, but deep down he is freaking out because he can't even hear what the Drake is saying. Ian then decides to raise his skill by using up points. He figures out that he is just going to pour all of his points into the summoning arts, and the moment he does this, he is informed that the summoning arts ability has increased. Suddenly, he hears the Drake's voice, and he immediately addresses the Drake. The Drake tells Ian to say whatever is on his mind and stop wasting time. With the Drake yelling and all, Ian calmly tells the Drake that he has no interest in fighting it. The Drake laughs this off, telling Ian that it is not even possible for a mere human like himself to try to fight him. Ian confirms this, saying they are basically going to lose if they try to. The Drake then asks Ian if what he is saying is that he wants it to save him. The Drake mocks Ian and his companions, saying it is going to be nothing to kill the likes of him. Ian hears this and heaves a sigh of relief because this means that they are out of the bad waters. Suddenly, the Drake tells him that there is a big issue, and this is the fact that he is currently in a bad mood. The Drake roars at them again, scaring the travelers to their knees, and Ian panics, wondering what it is that he can do. Ian then figures out that he just has to push through. He then asks the Drake what the issue is and why it is in a bad mood. The Drake asks Ian why he is subject to telling him anything. Ian replies that he just wants to see if he can be of some assistance to him, but the Drake yells at him, telling him that he is quite arrogant. It tells Ian that there is nothing a mere human can possibly do to help. Ian then decides to stop arguing and just show his power to the Drake. He surrounds himself with wind power, and the Drake is shocked to see this. Ian mentions that he is just a humble mage who is seeking the mysteries of the world, which is why he is hoping to offer his modest strength to help the Drake. Now that he has gotten the beast's attention, Ian figures out that it is time for negotiations. Ian heaves a sigh of relief when he realizes that the Drake's bloodlust has vanished, which means he has escaped an immediate danger. Ian decides that it is time to show the dragon what he is made of, to prevent the dragon from leading him around with some trash request. Just then, he remembers what his master told him, telling him that he cannot use magic without communicating with the mystic arts. This is basically why the kind of relationship he builds with the mysteries matters. Eridas lets him know that every mystery has a different personality, which is why, as a mage, it is important for him to understand and empathize with how the mystery feels. It then dawns on Ian that, as a mage, what is most important is the art of social maneuvering. He decides to try out his luck, and he calls out the all-purpose status window. Ian spots the expert summoning techniques, which are exactly what he needs. He goes through it, and what he finds shocks him. He learns that he is supposed to give the Drake alcohol, and the larger the body, the stronger the drink should be. After he is done giving it alcohol, he is supposed to suck up to the Drake as much as he can. Ian cannot believe that this is what he is supposed to do, which is the complete opposite of his character. He then decides to win the Drake's heart first, hoping that if he does this, a breakthrough will present itself. Ian then tells the Drake that he has a present for it, asking if it is okay to present the gift. The Drake tells Ian to bring his so-called gift so it can see it. Ian then orders Reek, telling him to go to the wagon at that instant to bring the strongest liquor that they have. When the drinks are finally brought to the Drake's presence, it is not entirely impressed, as it believes that it is a stingy gift. However, Ian tells the Drake that in the human world, the smaller the quantity, the more expensive it is. Ian pours the liquor in a cup, telling the Drake to have at it, but the beast is irritated by it, and it yells at Ian, asking him if he is plotting something sinister against it. However, Ian assures the Drake that he is not, and then offers to drink some of the liquor to show it that it is safe. Ian gulps down the drink, and after he is done, he is able to use this to prove to the dragon that the drink is safe. However, he almost passes out because of how strong the drink is. The Drake admits that it is safe to drink, but at the same time it is still not comfortable because of the pungent smell that it has. However, Ian urges the Drake to give it a taste, assuring the Drake that it is going to be satisfied. The Drake finally takes a taste of the drink, and its face turns red in excitement. The Drake tells Ian that the drink might not be delicious, but for some reason it is actually addictive. However, Ian uses this to his advantage, telling the Drake that it should have more because it only gets better from here on. Just as predicted, the Drake finds itself drowning in the alcohol the more it takes. In fact, the Drake has drunk over 7 barrels, and he is still standing strong. Ian had plans to get the Drake drunk and then escape while he was asleep, but he doesn't even think this option is no longer possible. Just then, the Drake calls Ian's attention to the question he asked him earlier about why he was in a bad mood. Ian stares at the Drake and is surprised that he is suddenly ready to talk to him. The Drake then reveals that his nest is in a bad location and it is cramped compared to the others. Even with this, his girlfriend used to assure him that it was a relaxing place. Ian is shocked to hear this, as he can't believe that the Drake actually has a girlfriend with an ugly face like that. The Drake reveals that he didn't even know that others were already mocking his girlfriend behind his back, and because of this, he felt bad, which forced him to initiate a breakup. Suddenly, the Drake lets out a loud roar in pain, which is enough to wake the other travelers from their sleep before knocking them out right back. Ian starts to pity him because his feelings for his lover are just the same as those of humans. Just then, it dawns on Ian that he can use this to his advantage. Ian then gets on his feet, telling the Drake that he can use his magic to help him fix his nest. The Drake is shocked to hear that Ian is willing to help him, but Ian lets him know that he would have to do something in return too. Later on, Reek snaps out of his coma when he hears Ian threatening to pull out his fingers. By the time they all wake up, they find themselves at the back of a carriage, being pulled by Ian. When they finally come to a stop, Kathy asks Ian if the Drake returned to his nest, but he tells them the Drake is waiting for them. Reek freaks out, asking if the Drake is waiting around because he wants to eat them. However, Ian lets them know that the Drake is waiting for him because he made a deal with him on the condition that he would help the travelers. Kathy is surprised to hear this, since she has no idea what sort of deal he is talking about. The others, on the other hand, are already celebrating that the mage sacrificed himself for them. Basically, Ian had told the Drake that he would release the travelers in exchange for fixing his nest. Before Ian knows it, Reek and the others dedicate a song to him. They sing wholeheartedly, talking about how Ian defeated the Drake. They basically turn Ian into a deity that they have to worship and protect. Ian is left wondering what the hell the group is talking about. Before Ian leaves, he tells them not to leave without him, but urges them to prepare to depart once he gets back. After his departure, the group comes together to take a head count, but without them knowing, Kathy vanishes. Soon afterward, Ian arrives at the Drake's nest, and even he is left in shock. The Drake can see the reaction on his face, and he yells at him, telling him that he can't back down, but Ian lets him know that he has no intention of backing out. Ian says he is basically just checking things out. Apparently, Ian is already exhausted from using Moronius language, and he figures out that he just has to fix the nest so he can go rest. Ian then calls on the Earth, telling it that he has a favor to ask, but the Earth yells at him, telling him that it is not in the mood. Ian cannot believe that the Earth is mad at him, and when the Drake asks Ian how his conversation with the Earth went, Ian reveals that the Earth refused to speak with him. However, he plans to ask the Earth again once her mood improves. When the Drake hears this, he basically gives up on trying to fix the nest, saying this only means that his ex is not his soulmate. The Drake then introduces himself, revealing that he is Longtail Drake, while asking Ian to be his friend. Ian agrees to this, and as they form a bond, the system informs Ian that he has acquired a skill to help him summon Longtail, since he is now his friend. Even though it is good news for Ian, he is not entirely happy, since he wasn't able to do anything for his friend. Just then, Longtail shows Ian his treasure room, which is filled with several valuable items, telling Ian to take as many as he likes, since they are friends now. Ian is blown away by the amount of treasures in the room, and he remembers that his master told him that dragons like to gather treasures, and since Longtail is a dragon's relative, it is not far-fetched that he would also have treasures of his own. Ian moves over to the jewels, and wishes the Earth could see the jewels, so she could listen to his request. Suddenly, an idea comes to his head, and he asks Longtail if it is fine for him to do a bit of scribbling on the ground. Ian then draws a magic circle on the ground, which his master once taught him. Apparently, his master had told him that if a mystery is sulking, all he has to do is offer a gift with a magic circle. Ian places a jewel in the middle of the circle and then calls the Earth again. The Earth responds again, but before she can start complaining, Ian tells her to make the walls smooth. Reacting to the jewel in the middle of the circle, the Earth agrees to do what he wants. Using the Earth magic, the whole nest is immediately transformed so much that even Longtail is blown away. In fact, he is so mesmerized by how neat everything came out to be that he wants to start crying. Longtail is left totally blown away, and he thanks Ian for the help. Longtail says that with this, he can now take care of his soulmate, and even if they have children in the nest, they will be safe. Suddenly, Ian starts to feel lightheaded, and before he knows it, blood drips out of his nose. Longtail is still asking him what is going on when Ian crashes to the ground and passes out. Longtail grabs Ian, screaming at him to be fine since he doesn't know what to do. Longtail is wondering what to do when he hears Kathy's voice in the distance, calling Ian. Longtail immediately cuts her off, and he roars at Kathy aggressively, believing that she is coming to hurt Ian. However, Kathy urges Longtail to calm down, telling him that she is Ian's friend, so he should not eat her. Upon hearing this, Longtail calms down, and he gives Kathy the chance to check on Ian. Soon afterward, Ian starts coming back to life, and the first thing his mind goes to is his phone. He hasn't even properly woken up when he stretches his hand to his side to try to look for his phone. Unknown to him, he is resting on Kathy's lap, and he ends up touching her hands. He wonders why his phone is so soft the way it is, and without opening his eyes, he continues pressing Kathy's hand, believing that it is his phone. It isn't until Kathy's voice cuts through his ears that he realizes he is not back in his old world. He opens his eyes to find himself on Kathy's lap and quickly gets back on his feet. He is shocked when he sees Kathy in the nest, asking her what she is doing there. Since Kathy witnessed what just happened, she urges him to lie down a bit because it appears that his head is still scrambled. However, Ian refuses, and he gets on his feet, thinking about how he passed out because he pushed his summoning level too far while he was communicating with Longtail. Just then, it dawns on Ian that Kathy must have seen everything that happened, and he almost dies from embarrassment. Ian then asks Kathy where Longtail is, and Kathy reveals that he left suddenly. Ian wonders if he has gone to meet his girlfriend already. Ian apologizes for causing Kathy trouble, but she assures him that it is fine. It then dawns on Ian that Kathy must have been able to get past Longtail to get to him. Kathy reveals that she only told Longtail that she is his friend, and Longtail let her through. After they are done with the conversation about how she got there, Kathy tells Ian that there is something she needs to tell him. Kathy reveals that the attack that happened the night before was because of him. Ian is surprised to hear this and wonders if this is why Kathy was shaking so much the night before. Ian then asks Kathy if she is in league with the bandits who attacked them, but Kathy says no, asking what part of her looks like she is a freaking bandit. Ian defends his claim, saying her face gave her away because it is the normal thing in fantasy stories that a beautiful lady is the leader. Kathy then decides to tell Ian a secret that he obviously doesn't know, which is the fact that she is not Kathy. Ian is not entirely surprised when he hears this, and he is expecting her to finish her statement by saying she is the princess of the country. Kathy continues by saying her real name is Lucy of the Tarian family. Lucy reveals that the bandits were after her because they were sent by her fiancé to kidnap her. Ian hears this and concludes that it is a lover's quarrel, but the moment Lucy sees the reaction on his face, she tells him that it is not what he thinks. Lucy mentions that she planned to go far away so her fiancé will not be able to find her. However, after what happened the night before, she has lost confidence in escaping alone. Because of this, she asks Ian to help her escape. Ian urges her to calm down because he wants to know why she is running away. He asks her if her fiancé did something bad. She mentions that the Tarian family is a barony family that rules over the Fianlep region, but because they lack enough knights to serve them, they are always exposed to danger from external enemies. With the trajectory that the family is going, they realize they would be destroyed by territorial wars. To prevent this, the Tarian family betrothed her to a knight who was a former mercenary captain. Since he was the captain of the most influential mercenary group at the time, the external forces targeting their family had reduced. Initially, everything seemed to be fine, and even her fiancé appeared to be satisfied with the status of being a son-in-law to a baron. In the end, he began to abuse the power he gained through his position, and he started creating a harem while treating Lucy like a fool. After her parents couldn't handle it anymore, they demanded that the engagement be broken. However, things took a dark turn when the dude poisoned her parents. Ian is shocked when he hears this. Lucy mentions that the dude knows that if the engagement is broken, he would lose the power he had obtained, which is why he poisoned her parents and silenced the servants. Upon hearing this, Ian realizes that they are dealing with a scumbag. Lucy mentions that the dude might act almighty all he wants, but without getting married to her, he is just a regular commoner. He basically can't inherit the family's fortune either. Lucy reveals that this was why she escaped with the help of a servant, since she was prepared to die rather than marry the dude. However, it is obvious that he would continue chasing her to make sure that the marriage works. Because of this, Lucy has no choice but to beg Ian to help her escape safely. After hearing everything, Ian realizes that it is quite a serious situation, and he can see why it would be hard to do alone. With everything that is going on, Ian realizes that the whole matter is a bit complicated. Ian cannot just wrap his head around the mindset of those in power during medieval times. With tears in her eyes, Lucy assures Ian, while placing her honor on the Tarian name. Ian asks Lucy why she chose him and also wants to know what she would do if he betrayed her. Lucy replies that this dude is a scumbag, and even if he sold her out to him, he will just give him a few silver coins. She, on the other hand, can give him everything he wants, and Ian asks her what she means by everything. Lucy lets him know that she can even give him the Tarian family if he wishes. Ian thinks about this and figures out that he could even marry Lucy, since she is offering to give him everything. For someone like him, who was the son of a farmer, to marry a noble would be an incredible opportunity. However, if it comes to this, he wonders what would come about his career as a mage. At the same time, he knows that living as a noble and engaging in politics isn't a bad life, but since he was born into a fantasy world, he believes that it would be better if he devotes himself to mastering magic. He figures out that by helping Lucy, he should be able to gain experience as a mage. In addition, he can even earn travel expenses, but at the moment, he just has to drive off the pursuers and leave the rest to fate. Ian then speaks up, telling Lucy that it would be better for her to ask someone with a sword for help than him, since mages aren't warriors. Lucy is about to start another round of persuasion when Ian tells her that since she is willing to pay, he can help her escape. However, he lets her know that whatever happens afterward is on her. The moment Lucy hears this, she covers her face and starts crying, sending Ian into full panic mode. He tries to comfort her, asking her if he said something awful because he was only trying to help. However, Lucy clears the air, thanking him for everything. She places her head on his shoulder, shedding tears on his shoulder. After the two are done, they step outside, and Ian is surprised to see Longtail tanning in preparation to meet his girlfriend. Longtail is happy to see him, and he asks him about his condition. Ian assures Longtail that he is fine, and he reveals that it looks like about time they head down the mountain because everyone is waiting. Ian thanks Longtail for the gift, and Longtail assures him that it is nothing. He then tells Ian to get on his back so he can give him a ride. Ian climbs the dragon, thanking him for the assistance. Just then, Longtail yells at Lucy to climb on too, since she is Ian's girlfriend. Ian quickly clears the air, telling Longtail that he has it all mixed up. While the two are busy talking about this, Lucy stands there totally clueless, wondering what it is that they are talking about. Ian then stretches his hand toward her, telling her to get on. Once the two are seated, Longtail happily rides out, heading in the direction of the other travelers. Meanwhile, the other travelers are trying to convince Reek that they need to leave the area before more bandits show up on site. Reek watches as two of the merchants argue with each other about whether bandits have what it takes to stick around or just run off. However, when they ask Reek for his stance on the whole thing, he tells them that they have to wait for the mage. The one who is in support is glad to hear this, while the other one is totally pissed. Reek is waiting on Ian to return because he is pretty sure that he didn't die, since he doesn't look like a weak mage. This is their belief until 10 minutes later, when they were attacked by bandits. They get beaten up so badly that Reek regrets not running off when he had the chance. The leader of the bandits screams at them, telling them to stop crying while promising that he's going to make their deaths fast. Reek begs the leader, who has an eye patch, to hand over the girl. Reek asks him what he means by this, and the bandit leader explains that there is a girl with them who has blue hair, so they should not even try to play dumb with him. This is when it dawns on them that the bandits are after Lucy. Just when it is time for them to start looking for Lucy, it dawns on them that she is nowhere to be found. The bandit leader assumes that they are mocking him, and he grabs his sword, ready to cut them down, but suddenly, they spot Ian in the distance. The moment they see Ian coming their way, the group knows that they are saved already. The bandit leader doesn't know what is happening until he sees a drake charging towards them. Instead of being concerned with the imminent danger, his focus is on Lucy, who is riding on the drake's back. However, when his subordinates finally call his attention to the danger, he screams at them, telling them to run for it. After the bandits leave, Reek tells Lucy that she should be thankful that she is with the mage because the bandits would have hurt her. Lucy cannot believe that the man is pitying her when he is the one who looks like he was beaten with a brick. One of the merchants then asks the important question, asking his friends how the bandits know about Lucy. His colleague reasons with him, saying it is true because they started looking for Lucy the moment they arrived, which is quite awful for dudes who are from Heavenly God Church. The moment Ian hears the name, he realizes that it's been a while since he last heard about the church. Apparently, the religion of this world is the Heavenly God Church, and its doctrine forbids turning believers into slaves. However, human traffickers and slave traders threw away those commandments a long time ago. Ian is also surprised that even after seeing a mage and a drake, they still didn't give up on Lucy, which shows just how persistent they are. It then dawns on him that the situation is quite bad, and if it continues this way, they're going to catch up to her. Ian then asks Longtail if he can do a favor for him. Longtail assures him that he can, and Ian tells Longtail to drive away the bandits. In fact, if it is necessary, he lets Longtail know that he can kill them. Longtail gladly accepts the request, since it is coming from a friend. Without wasting time, Longtail goes after the bandits. Even though Ian doesn't want to actually kill the bandits, he has figured out that they are in a medieval fantasy world where killing and being killed are quite normal. He knows that he has to change if he wants to survive in this world too. Suddenly, his head starts getting fuzzy and he realizes that he must have used too much Maronius language again. He holds his head in pain and Lucy grabs him, urging him to be careful because it appears that he is overstressing himself. However, Ian assures her that he is fine. While the two are busy talking about this, Reek spots them and immediately assumes that they are dating. Moments later, the group continues their journey and Ian rests in the back of the carriage to regain his strength. Surprisingly, he is getting a kill notification for every human that Longtail kills. Ian is amazed at how convenient the whole thing is, but is sad that he can't call Longtail out at the moment. Suddenly, Longtail contacts him, telling him that he has driven away the bandits, and Ian thanks him for helping him out. Longtail says he is happy as long as what he does makes his friends happy. Longtail then asks Ian if he is leaving already, and Ian says yes. Ian mentions that it is a shame, but it is goodbye for them. Basically, Longtail can't leave the mountain range, and Ian is disappointed that they might never meet again. Before they end their conversation, Longtail asks him if he is interested in the mystery of the Phoenix. Soon afterward, they arrive at Riverville, but Ian is totally distracted by what Longtail told him. Apparently, Longtail told him that there is an ice phoenix living in the northern mountains, so he urges Ian to go check it out. What Ian knows about the phoenix is that it is a bird that never disappears, even after death. Basically, it is not just the firebird as known in his other world. The phoenix is basically a bird that can change its form depending on its environment, whether it is ice, wind, rock, and the like. It is basically known as a monster with high environmental adaptability. This leaves Ian wondering if he can actually summon the phoenix. Since they have arrived at their destination, Reek walks over to Ian, telling him that they plan to go meet the Lord of the Territory, and he would like to know if he wants to come with them. Ian thinks about it for a minute and figures out that for Lucy to escape safely, it is better that she doesn't attract the attention of someone high-ranking, like the city lord. Reek urges Lucy to come with them, since she has nowhere to go, but Ian steps in, telling them that he and Lucy would rest at the inn before continuing their journey. The group is shocked when they hear this, and Lucy even plays along by placing her head on Ian's shoulder to get the group to believe the story. Reek laughs out loud because to him, it turns out that he is right about the two dating each other. With Reek and the others gone, Lucy asks Ian why he is using polite speech with commoners, and Ian replies that he is a commoner since he is a farmer's son. Lucy then reminds him that he is now a mage, and Ian replies that he is choosing this path since his master did the same. He is basically looking to emulate his master, who is friendly and polite. Ian asks Lucy what her next plan is, and she reveals that she is looking to meet Count Katina, who is her uncle from her mother's side. Lucy is pretty sure that her uncle would help her once she explains her situation to him. Ian points out that it must have been that her mother and the Count are close, and Lucy says it can be compared to that. However, Lucy's reluctance tells Ian that the uncle might not even be the best choice. He then asks Lucy if there is anyone else besides her uncle that she can trust, and Lucy yells at him, asking him if he is seriously doubting her uncle. Lucy claims that her uncle is the most trustworthy person in the world. Ian is shocked to see her defending her uncle so much, and he concludes that her uncle is a really good person. Lucy says her uncle is much better than someone she doesn't know at all because everyone else would probably try to marry her. Lucy then shifts gears into another direction, saying she would not mind if someone like Ian proposed to her. However, Ian lets her know that their contract comes to an end the moment they meet Count Katina. Lucy scolds him, telling him that he is being harsh since a noble is offering to marry him. Ian piles on the misery, telling her that there are loads of women out there aside from her. This hurts her feelings, and she walks off in anger while telling Ian that he is basically the worst. Shortly afterward, they arrive at the inn, and Ian informs the attendant that he would like to stay a few nights. In addition, he would like to use the bath, and he hands the attendant a pouch full of gold coins while asking if it will be enough. With a smile on her face, she assures Ian that it is more than enough while informing him that she is going to prepare a room for him immediately. The attendant then asks Ian if Lucy will be taking her bath too, and Lucy yells out in embarrassment, saying no. Ian asks her if she is rejecting the offer because she thinks the water is also going to get dirty, and Lucy says this is just part of it. Lucy asks him if she really has to say it out loud for him, and Ian just stares at her in total confusion since he has no idea what she is even talking about. Ian finally understands where the problem is. He finds out that the bath is in the open, and he quickly tells Lucy that she doesn't have to come with him, saying he is going to go in the bath alone. Just then, Ian notices that a bunch of suspicious men are in the room, and they are all staring at Lucy. He quickly orders her to put on her robe. Instead of doing what she is told, she is still arguing with him for using her real name, but Ian just forces her to put on the robe to cover her face while telling her she is annoying. However, the suspicious guys have already gotten a good look at her face, and they are all looking to have a taste of her. The dudes are already discussing among themselves, talking about how beautiful Lucy is. They even compare her beauty to that of an angel, and they believe that she is vulnerable since she has just one scrawny dude with her. They plan to snatch her up so that they can have some fun with her, and since it appears that Ian and Lucy won't stay long, the group figures out that they have to kidnap her that very day. Meanwhile, Reek is meeting with the city lord, Baron Kaltz, concerning business in the city. Kaltz urges Reek not to cause any trouble, and Reek assures him that he won't. Just then, Reek remembers that from what he heard, he can spend time in the castle if he gets on the Baron's good side. It immediately dawns on him that he can actually tell the lord about Ian to get on his good side. Reek then tells Kaltz that there is something he would like to tell him, and the Lord asks him what it is. Reek starts by saying it is supposed to be a secret, but because of his respect for the Lord, he couldn't keep quiet. Reek then reveals that during his travels, he encountered a mage, and the mage defeated the bad guys to save them. Reek talks about Ian like some sort of deity, but this gets Kaltz worried. Reek continues by telling Kaltz that Ian is currently staying at the inn in the town. Kaltz freaks out, asking Reek what it is that he is trying to say. Basically, Kaltz is worried that if the mage throws a tantrum and unleashes a drake on the territory, it is going to end in chaos. In fact, the whole region could get wiped out. To make it worse, there is already a group of absolute maniacs who are currently residing in town, and they are the Holy Santiago Knights. These knights are a group who have taken up arms out of the desire to serve God. They are basically monks and martial artists. However, rather than fighting wars, they hunt for demons and monsters, and they proclaim themselves the protectors of humanity. Kaltz is worried that hell is going to let loose if the mage and the knights are to cross paths. In panic, Kaltz calls on his commander, telling him to give Reek a room, adding that he should also summon the Santiago Knights to the castle. Apparently, in his head, he believes that the knights would be easier to reason with than a crazy mage. Back at the inn, Ian and Lucy are having their meal when Ian offers to go prepare the bathwater since it appears that the attendant is really busy. Ian tells Lucy to go upstairs immediately after she finishes her food. Unknown to them, the suspicious men already have their eyes on Lucy. After she is done eating, she takes the stairs, heading to her room, but she is suddenly approached by the suspicious men. They approach her in a cool way to make sure she doesn't suspect anything, and they tell Lucy that Ian, who is her companion, is the one who hired them. The dude flashes off a gold coin, saying Ian asked them to bring her to the docks. Lucy is surprised to hear this, since she thought Ian was taking his bath. The bad guy then tells Lucy that there was some kind of incident right as he went to the backyard to bathe. Lucy freaks out because she believes that the bandits have tracked her down to the town. Scared about the whole situation, Lucy doesn't hesitate before following the dude. As they rush through the back, she suddenly spots Ian preparing the bathwater across the fence. Lucy is shocked to see this, but before she can even do anything, they put a sack over her. She starts screaming in the sack, calling Ian's name. Ian hears her voice, but before he can even do anything, one of the bad guys rushes over to attack him. Ian dodges the strike, causing the dude to trip and crash to the ground. Ian figures out that the dudes are not from Lucy's fiancé. By the time he gets up to try to chase down the bad guys, one of them blocks his path. Ian angrily attacks the dude with wind magic, but he has a limit to what he can do since he is still exhausted from the magic he's used. Ian then decides to find the mystery that is currently willing to lend a hand, and the darkness offers to help. Without hesitation, Ian calls down darkness on the dudes, freaking them out. With him being the only one who can see the situation, he arms himself with a stick and starts beating the dudes so hard. While the dude is screaming for help, Ian suddenly spots some dudes coming in the distance, and he figures out that the dude called for backup. The darkness soon vanishes, and Ian yells at the bad guy, asking him where they took Lucy. Suddenly, a knife flies past Ian's head, hitting the board behind him. Ian looks forward and sees a bunch of stern-looking men walking towards him, led by a scary old man, asking him if he was the one who summoned the darkness that they just witnessed. It turns out that the group is the feared Santiago Knights. Ian confidently replies that he is the one who summoned the darkness. Even though Ian looks bold, he can sense an immense bloodthirst from the old man. The bad guy immediately uses this to his advantage, begging the knights to save him from Ian. He claims that Ian was trying to kill him for no reason, and hearing this only makes Ian angrier. The old man then says everything makes perfect sense now that he knows that he is a mage. Ian asks him what he means by this, and the old man replies that this is how mages like to do their things. The old man claims that mages are beings who do whatever they please. Ian loses it when he hears this because he doesn't want to believe that the dude has such a trash image in his head about mages. Ian yells at the old man, telling him to stop saying trash. Ian mentions that the bad guy was the one who attacked him first, and he doesn't even see any reason why he would start beating someone up for no reason. Before Ian knows it, he realizes that he has crashed out on the group, and he becomes worried because he is going to be in danger if the old man starts swinging his sword. Surprisingly, the old man tells Ian that he appears to be a skilled mage because of how he speaks. Basically, having a foul mouth in this world is proof of high skill. One of the knights then cuts in, saying Ian might be skilled, but this doesn't mean he should have used evil magic. Ian asks him what he means by evil magic, and he replies that obscuring the surroundings with darkness is evil because it implies hiding from the sun, the eye of the heavens. The dude claims that hiding in the darkness is a despicable act. Ian is shocked to hear that they are claiming that darkness is despicable because it rejects the sun. Ian immediately figures out that they are believers of the Heavenly God Church because of how they speak. Ian decides to educate them, asking them if it is not the providence of the heavens that day and night can coexist. He asks them why darkness exists if the Divine One only dwells in the light. The moment they hear this, they become mute, and Ian continues, yelling at them, saying he didn't create darkness because it existed, because the Divine Being wanted it to exist. Thanks to how angry Ian is, his scream almost renders the big guy, who is asking him dumb questions, deaf. This leaves the knights to come together to talk about what Ian just said. After so much deliberation, they finally agree with Ian, saying that without God's permission, no one could possibly cast darkness under the sun. Once they have all seen reason in what he said, Ian asks the knights if he can leave because his sister was kidnapped. It immediately dawns on the old man that the bad guy Ian was beating up is an accomplice to the kidnappers, and Ian confirms this. The dude realizes that he is done for, and he tries to change the narrative, but the old man orders that they take him away. The old man tells the big guy, Dietrich, to stay behind to keep an eye on the bad guy. The old man then tells Ian that they are going to lend him a hand to retrieve his sister as an apology. Shortly afterward, they arrive at the docks to find the kidnappers just leaving on a boat. The knights are pissed when they see this, and the old man orders his men to bring forward their boat so that they can chase down the kidnappers. Upon hearing their slogan, Ian finally figures out that they are knights, and he urges them not to use the boat. He lets them know that he is just going to pull the boat closer, so they should just throw a hook into the boat when he does. The old man is surprised when he hears this because he believes that Ian is just a user of shadow magic and never expected him to be able to use water magic. Ian reveals that he has completed the beginner level in several different schools of magic, and the old man is surprised to hear this since the mages he's found on the battlefield could only use one type of magic. In addition, he doesn't expect Ian to be able to cast spells, since he claims that he has only mastered the beginner level. Ian then gets into action, and he calls on the river to heed his command. The river follows his word, and a huge typhoon hits the water, shocking the knights because Ian is displaying a magic that even surpasses the water magic used on the battlefield. Before the kidnappers know what is happening, the water's current turns the other direction and starts leading them back to the docks. In the end, the kidnappers are captured, and Lucy is saved. Lucy rushes into Ian's arms while screaming out his name with tears in her eyes. Ian doesn't know how he's going to react to this until the old man scolds him, reminding him that his sister is currently crying in his arms. Ian then pets Lucy, saying he understands that she must have been through some rough times. Even while comforting her, all he can think about is how he's going to go back to the inn to take a bath. Little does he know that having a peaceful bath in this world is not as easy as he thinks. Later on, Ian is having his bath, and unknown to him, the Lord's eldest son, Bernard, is rushing in his direction with his knight, Hansen. It turns out that he has seen the smoke from the bath, and it has gotten his attention. Ian is surrounded by the Santiago Knights when Bernard rushes into the yard, asking Ian what he is doing. Ian casually answers the dude that he is obviously taking a bath. Bernard almost loses his mind when he hears this because even the imperial people rarely bathe except on special occasions. He believes that he deserves to receive a report as the eldest son of the town. While Bernard is raging, the old man Ruda comes in to try to calm the situation. However, Bernard tells him to screw off because he was asking Ian a question, not him. Ruda then tells Bernard to calm down because Ian is actually a mage. Instead of backing down, Bernard proceeds to do something unusual, and he tells Ian to get out of the bath to greet him personally. Ian is not surprised because in this world, there is a noble culture called mage baiting. It is a procedure where a noble provokes a mage just to confirm their power. A mage who responds to this calmly is considered to be a weak mage, but a mage who crashes out is considered truly powerful. The moment Ian figures out that Bernard is trying to mage bait him, he decides to play the game, and he refuses Bernard's instruction to step out of the bath. Bernard loses his mind when he hears this, and he yells at Ian, asking him if he is seriously refusing him. Ian calmly asks him why he should answer him, and Bernard tells Hansen to drag Ian out of the bath. Since Bernard is still putting on an act, Ian decides to take things even more seriously. He stands up in the bath and displays a scary magic power that puts fear in Bernard and Hansen. Bernard quickly begs Ian, telling him to stop because he has finally seen enough of his power. Ian smiles because he is pretty sure that something like this would make Bernard back down. However, Bernard crashes to the ground and starts crying like a baby, leaving Ian to wonder if he went too far. At this point, he is already scared that the Lord might even execute him. The following day, Ian is summoned to the castle, and instead of Colt executing Ian, he actually apologizes for the trouble his son caused him. Colt then asks about Lucy, and Ian reveals that she is at the inn. Ian doesn't see any reason why he should unnecessarily show Lucy's face, which is why he left her at the inn for Ruda and the others to watch over her. Colt then asks Ian for his master's name, and he reveals that it is Eridus. It appears that Colt knows who she is, and he asks if she is headed south. Ian confirms this, saying this is where the Magic University is located. Colt is surprised to hear that she didn't head toward the Duchy of Palgar or the Duchy of Roxlan. Ian asks him what he means by this, and he replies that things have been tense as of late. Apparently, the Duchy of Palgar is targeting Roxlan, which means that there might be a war. Colt then asks Ian if he is also heading south, but Ian lets him know that he is heading east in search of mysteries. Since this is the case, the man offers to give Ian a gift. Ian is surprised, and he wonders what the gift might be. Moments later, a big chest is brought forward, and Ian asks Colt what is inside it. He tells him to open it, and Ian opens the box to check it out. Ian is blown away when he opens the box to find out that it is a staff. Kaltz mentions that it is a staff that was once used by a certain aeromancer, and it is called Windwalker. Ian is impressed by the name, and he grabs the staff to check it out. The staff that has a red orb in the middle of the arc looks pretty cool in Ian's hands, and Kaltz confirms this. Ian smiles because the situation appears like he just got a mage's starter item. Kaltz tells Ian that it is an expression of his gratitude for forgiving his son's rudeness. He asks Ian if he likes it, and Ian assures him that he does, thanking the dude for the staff. When Ian returns to the inn, he is met with another case of emergency, as claimed by Lucy. Ruta takes Ian to a birdcage where a crow is being held. He explains that a hunter caught the crow that morning and was about to eat it, but Lucy stopped the hunter. Lucy mentions that she saved the crow because Ian's last name is Raven, and since crows and ravens are relatives, she thinks it would be cool. She is so sure that Ian would love the gift, but Ian breaks her heart, telling the hunter to go ahead and eat the crow, while apologizing for the trouble that Lucy caused. Ian scolds Lucy, reminding her that he is the mage in the situation and doesn't even understand what she is talking about. The hunter rushes over to the cage, thanking Ian for clearing the air as he is now ready to grill the crow. Ian is about to leave the room when he hears the crow's voice speaking to him, begging Ian to save him. Ian immediately rushes back, telling the hunter to calm down. Ian then communicates with the crow, asking it what it is, and the crow only urges Ian to save it. However, Ian yells at it, telling it to answer the question, but Ian soon realizes that the crow doesn't even understand Maronius's language, which means that there is a possibility that it lacks mystery. The only thing the crow keeps saying is to beg Ian to spare it, and Ian is forced to tell it to shut up, assuring it that he is going to help it. The crow continues yelling for help, forcing Ian to scream at it. The crow immediately goes quiet, and Ian realizes that the crow might not understand human language, but it can actually read the room. The hunter is surprised when he realizes that Ian is actually communicating with the crow, and Ian reveals that the crow wants to be saved. Ian then tells the hunter to leave the crow with him in the meantime. And this gladdens Lucy's heart because her wish finally came through. Ruta commends Lucy, saying this basically means that she can see mystery too. Lucy rides the wave, saying she has never studied magic, but it appears that she has talent for it. Later on, Ian wraps a bandage around the crow's broken wing so it can heal. Lucy asks Ian what he plans to do with the crow. She wants to know if he is going to hand it back over to the hunters, but Ian knows he can't do this, since the hunters will just eat it. Just then, the crow climbs onto his arm and it speaks to Ian, urging him not to abandon it because the people in the area are pretty scary. Seeing how troubled the crow is, Ian places the crow on his shoulder. Lucy asks Ian if he is currently communicating with the crow, and he says yes, but he wants to believe that this is just a temporary situation until the crow fully heals. Lucy brightens up and says that they have to give the crow a name. She immediately suggests that they name it Obsidian because it has beautiful black eyes. However, Ian argues that this is too long, so he suggests that they shorten it to Oberon. The crow appears to like the name as it spreads its wings on Ian's shoulder, and Ian is surprised that it actually likes the name. Just then, Lucy tells Ian what she's been thinking. She suggests that they travel with Ruta and the other knights. Lucy believes that it is actually better than traveling alone, and Ian realizes that this is actually a good suggestion because it would not be easy for bandits to easily attack them. However, it is going to be a problem if they are not heading the same way as them. Ian is thinking about this when Ruta enters the room, asking Ian what he is thinking about. Ruta lets Ian know that he might be a mage, but traveling alone with a woman is quite dangerous. Ruta suggests that they make a deal and reveals that they are currently on their way to capture a monster that appeared in Baron Katina's territory. Ian asks him about the monster, and he mentions that it is a manticore. A manticore is a notorious beast known for its cruelty and enjoyment for killing. Ian then asks Ruta if he is suggesting that they capture the manticore together, but Ruta says no, revealing that he doesn't want Ian in danger. However, if he is willing to help, they are not going to stop him. Ian takes a minute to think about it and tells Ruta that he is not interested, but Ruta grabs him, urging him to hear him out first. Ruta says what they need from him isn't hunting, and he reveals that they are a knight order formed by a monastic group of the Heavenly God Church. When they made plans to go and capture the manticore, the priests in the Count's territory forcibly requested help from a mage. Ruta figures out that they are offended and they want Ian to smooth things out with the mage. Basically, what a mage says is going to carry more weight than what a knight says. Ian thinks about it and realizes that it is not really a bad deal, and if he just calms down the sulking mage, they're going to get themselves a knight escort. Ian then agrees to the deal, and in no time, the group sets out on the journey. Traveling with the Knight Order was comfortable for Ian because the members of the Knight Order were all good people. It was completely stress-free, but there was something to complain about. Any opportunity that the knights get, they are always asking him to study the Holy Scriptures with them. Ian is always saying no, but they are pretty relentless. Ruta then tells Ian that if he could hear the voice of God, he might actually become a cleric of the order. A cleric is basically a church mage who uses divine mystery. Ian is interested in this because if he can get an opportunity to talk to God, he could ask why he was reincarnated and about the status window. Because of this, he finally decides to join in learning the scripture, and the knights are glad that he has finally changed his mind. Ian is invested in the scriptures when he suddenly hears a voice that isn't human in his head, and all indications point to divinity. Ian yells at the voice, asking him if he is God, and the voice taunts him, saying he might be on the right path. Ian then starts asking questions like, why did God reincarnate him into that world, or why there is even a status window? Ian screams at the top of his voice, but he gets ignored. Ian almost loses his mind when he realizes that he has just been aired, but he continues screaming, demanding that God return to him. The knights are forced to restrain him to try to get him to calm down. After this incident, Ian sits down with the Bible to study as if his life depends on it so he can have another chat with God. Even the knights who introduced him to the scriptures are left wondering if they had done the wrong thing at this point. In the end, Ian acquires a new skill, which is holy magic. This allows him to converse with the ruler of that world, which is basically the god of that world. However, Ian soon regrets his devotion because he starts getting notifications on the screen, urging him to study the Bible better. He is informed that the more he studies, the happier God will be. The prefixes of the divine being are so long that it is obvious that the system is even glazing the divine being. Ian wonders if he was dropped into this world by the divine being just to be giggled at. Ian almost cries when he realizes that he has to raise his magic level to hold a conversation with God directly. Ian then concludes that he would have to find more mysteries to gather points so he can upgrade his holy magic. Some days later, they run into bandits, but before Ian can even do anything, the Night Order takes down the bandits. They cut them down mercilessly while making sure that Ian is safe. Ruta walks up to Lucy, asking if she is fine, and she assures him that she is good. She asks Ruta if he is also good, and he mentions that no matter how old he gets, he can't be defeated by bandits. Ian then says he heard that the old man used to be a mercenary, and Ruta replies that he might not boast about it, but he made a name for himself in his youth. This is basically why he uses the alias Elder, because there are many who judge him by his name and try to attack him. Ian is surprised to hear this because this means that he is so famous that anyone would basically recognize his name. After wiping out the bandits, the Night Order celebrates their win, and moments later, they arrive at where the road splits. The east leads to the Count's castle, while the west leads to the forest where the Manticore appeared. Ruta says the forest where the mage lives is to the west, and he urges Ian to come along fast. However, Ian urges him to calm down. He turns to Lucy, telling her that they should go meet the mage first, and afterward they would head to Katina's place. However, Lucy refuses, telling him that she will continue on her own. Ian asks her if she will be fine by herself, and Lucy replies that she is not a kid, so she is definitely going to be fine. She tells Ian that she knows her way to her uncle's place, so she is definitely going to be fine. With a bright smile, she runs off, but Ian is left wondering if Lucy's going to be fine. He figures out that he has to wrap up the mission quickly to go after Lucy. Ruta is surprised that Lucy is leaving by herself, and he asks Ian about it. Ian replies that he is going to be joining her shortly, and he asks Ruta if they are going to be meeting the mage anytime soon. Ruta says yes, but grabs Ian, asking him if he is mentally prepared. Ian asks him what he means by this, and Ruta tells him that mages are temperamental. Since they are in a bad mood because of the church, there is no telling what they might do, and Ian asks him why he has to clean up the church's mess. Ruta then replies that they have to, since they are getting paid by the church, and Ian finally understands why everyone is wearing such nice armor. Ruta teases Ian, saying he's pretty sure that the mage is going to forgive them because Ian has a beautiful face. Ian is a bit nervous since this will be his first time meeting a mage other than himself, leaving him to wonder if it will be fine. Meanwhile, the mage, Monty Campbell, who is a batonomancer, is already waiting for them with his crooked stew. As Ruta and his men approach Monty's house, Ruta explains his power to Ian. Ruta tells Ian that Monty can manipulate vegetation, and he can also concoct terrifyingly potent drugs from plant toxins. However, they need Monty, since he has cooked up a powerful poison to hunt the Manticore. The moment they arrive at the entrance of the house, they are hit with a stinking smell that almost causes them to choke. Just then, Monty steps out to welcome the group, saying he has been waiting for them. He leads them into the house, and he serves them the horrible-smelling chicken stew that he has prepared for them. The knights almost vomit as they stare at the stew inside the plate in their hands. Ruta berates Mani, telling him that he doesn't even have to prove his power in such a horrible way. Mani argues that all he did was serve his guests a rare dish he made from crops he grew with great care. Mani tells them that they are free to leave if they are not his guests, but Ruta and the knights know that they have no choice. Seeing how the knights are almost choking on the smell of the dish alone, Mani wonders if he went too far. Surprisingly, one person among them all is munching on the food as if nothing is wrong, and this is none other than Ian. Even Mani cannot believe his eyes because Ian is basically tearing into a soup that is packed with garlic. Mani is forced to walk over to Ian to ask him if he is fine, and Ian simply replies that the dish is delicious. Mani almost passes out in shock when he hears this because he didn't prepare the dish to be delicious. Ian confirms this, saying the garlic even makes it even better, and right in front of everyone, he consumes a whole bulb of garlic. Mani is forced to grab Ian, telling him to stop whatever it is that he is doing. Mani mentions that he has been an herbalist for 40 years, but this is the first time he has seen someone as ridiculous as Ian. Mani then asks him for his name, and Ian replies that it is Ian Eridus Raven. The moment Mani hears his name, he realizes that Ian is Eridus's apprentice. Mani immediately apologizes for being mischievous, and as an apology, he enters the kitchen to cook up a more presentable dish. The dish looks so tasty, and while the knights are dying over this, Ian is mourning the horrible chicken stew dish that was taken away from him. While they are eating, Mani asks them if it is true that they are hunting a manticore, and Ruda confirms this. Mani lets him know that it is not going to be easy because Count Katina himself arranged for monster hunters to capture the manticore, but they were all wiped out. Ruda assures Mani that he is prepared for situations like this, and Mani asks him if he has ever caught a manticore. Ruda replies that only a few times, and this was when he was younger. Mani then turns to Ian, asking him if he has ever done this. Ian is confused by this, and Mani tells him that he must be a full-fledged mage if he was trained by Eridus. Mani suggests that he lend his wisdom to the knights about what a mage is supposed to do. Basically, a moment comes for every mage when they must interact with people, regardless of their own will. Eridus had told Ian that he must never take such a moment lightly. Ian knows that he doesn't have to go out of his way to catch the manticore, but if he refuses the proposal, bad rumors might spread at the Mage Gathering. The Mage Gathering is an organization formed by mages, led by the Magic University, to ensure proper use of mystery. Ian knows that if something like this happens, he won't have the effrontery to even face his master. In addition, he might not be able to seek help from other mages when he needs it. After looking at how everything is going to play out, Ian realizes that he has no choice, and he tells the knights that he is going to accompany them. The next day, the team heads into the forest on the Manticore mission. Ian can sense a strange tension in the air and can only hope that Lucy is fine. Moments later, Oberon yells at Ian, telling him that he has found the Manticore. Ruda asks Ian what the issue is, and Ian tells him that Oberon just informed him of the direction they are supposed to take to track down the Manticore. Ruda is blown away by this, and he admits that it is an insane ability. Apparently, Ian had made Oberon get used to human speech while it was sitting on his shoulder. He was able to teach Oberon in no time thanks to his magic skills. Just then, Ian asks Ruda something important. He wants to know if he can persuade a manticore, since it is also a monster. Ruda doesn't have an answer to this, but Mani cuts in, saying a manticore isn't the kind of creature one can talk to. Ian cracks down on Mani, asking him what he knows about summoning magic. Mani defends himself, saying he knows what a mystery is. Mani then tells Ian that he is even going to report him to Eridus even if he manages to persuade the manticore. Ian cannot believe that instead of praising him, he is going to tell his master. Suddenly, one of the knights calls their attention to the distance, telling them that the manticore is standing right in front of them. They look forward and realize that the manticore is looking their way, and Ruda tells the mages not to leave his side. Ruda reveals that he's already applied poison to all their weapons, and this is a poison that was specially developed by Mani. Ruda then orders his men to fire at the manticore, which they immediately do. To their dismay, the arrows bounce off the manticore's tough skin, leaving the knights confused about what to do. Ruda tells his men to attack again, but the manticore laughs at them before stepping out of the dark to face them. The laugh is so evil that even Ian becomes seriously worried. With the manticore now standing in front of them, they realize that they don't even have time to apply the poison properly. Just then, Ian screams at the top of his voice to get the manticore to notice him, and Mani is surprised that Ian actually did it. Once the manticore turns to Ian, it expresses its shock that a human dared to address it, which is quite rare. Ian then urges the manticore to stay calm while saying he is glad that he can actually understand him. Ian introduces himself, but suddenly the manticore mocks him, telling him to screw off. It even insults him, telling him to eat shit, and Ian yells at the manticore, asking it what its problem is. Surprisingly, the manticore reacts well to this, saying this is what it wants. It asks Ian what he wants, and Ian lets it know that he wants the skin of its head. The manticore laughs out loud, commending Ian for being an honest one. Just then, the manticore asks Ian to join forces with it to tear down the humans. The manticore shows how rotten it is as it talks about how enjoyable human meat is. In fact, it tells Ian that he is going to get plenty of golden women, and after Ian is done with the women, it is going to kill them. After hearing all the sickening things that the manticore has to say, Ian throws up right in its presence while flipping it off and calling it a piece of shit. Since Ian is not going to accept its proposal, the manticore leaps over him, telling him that it is going to wipe out everyone. As the manticore approaches the knights, Mani activates his magic to unleash giant roots to take over where the manticore is standing. Ruda yells at Mani, asking him what he's done. Mani replies that he just ate the manticore, but Ruda scolds him, telling him that there are knights close to the beast. Mani argues with Ruda, telling him to handle things the way he wants then. Ian and Ruda rush over to the other side and find the knights wounded. However, the worst has happened. Ian watches in horror as he sees Dietrich lying on the ground, fatally injured. Dietrich apologizes to Ruda for allowing the manticore to escape, but Ruda comforts him, telling him that it is not his fault. Ian stands there in horror, and for the first time he realizes that death is real in this world. However, he never thought he would get to mourn Dietrich of all people, and it dawns on him that everything he saw in stories has become a stark reality. Ian rushes over to grab Dietrich's hands, and he reminds him that he once told him that prayer and faith would make the heavens open. With tears of death in his eyes, Dietrich confirms this, and Ian suggests that they pray together. Ian starts praying, and he tells the ruler in heaven that Dietrich is their biggest fan. He asks if they are not going to do anything because Dietrich is about to die, and just then, Ian hears the voice of the heavens, telling him that if it is what he wants, they can give it a try. The knights are left in awe as Ian's hands start to glow, which is a sign of immense holy power. Suddenly, Dietrich finds himself in heaven with the goddess in front of him. Dietrich is left in shock, and the goddess welcomes him, telling him that she is happy to see him. Dietrich trembles in shock, and he bows his head to the goddess with the realization that he is in heaven. The goddess then tells him that there is something he must do. Dietrich asks what it is, and the goddess tells him that he must spread her will even further while helping the weak and bringing them happiness. Finally, the goddess tells Dietrich that he must help her apostle, Ian. After telling him her wish, she sends him off, and Ian opens his eyes and sees Ruda and the others. They are left in shock as Dietrich comes back to life, and Ian stands tall with pride, asking Dietrich how it feels to be back from the dead. Suddenly, Dietrich grabs Ian like a deity, praising him for standing as a medium between him and the goddess to save him. Ian cannot deny this, but knows he was only able to use holy magic because the goddess of the Heavenly God Church lent him her holy power. Ian then asks Dietrich how he knows this because it was the goddess who told him that he had to save him since he still has a lot to do. Dietrich is shocked because this is the same thing that the goddess told him. Dietrich immediately bows to Ian, addressing him as the apostle sent by the goddess. The other knights can't believe their eyes, and they assume that Dietrich is already losing his mind because there is no way Ian is an apostle. Moments later, Mani expresses his surprise that everyone almost died, but they appear to be full of energy. Ruda then suggests that they continue their hunt for the manticore, and the men agree to this in full capacity. Ian tells Ruda that he is going to send Oberon ahead to scout for them. Ian is determined to catch the manticore and defeat it because of what it did. Meanwhile, the manticore has made its way into town, and it's causing havoc. An old man and his son are seen trying to escape, but the old man slips from his son's hands. He falls to the ground, but before his son can turn around to get him out of there, the manticore has closed in on them. Instead of running off, the son grabs a fork and holds it toward the manticore, telling it to leave his father alone. Just then, the manticore shocks the dude by interacting with him in human language. The manticore then gives the dude an offer, telling him to kill his father while promising to spare his life and the rest of the townspeople. However, the dude yells at it, telling it that there is no way he is going to agree to this. Since it has come to this, the manticore says it has no choice but to kill the dude and everyone else on the scene. Father and son grab each other as they wait for their death. But suddenly, an arrow comes in from the distance, piercing the manticore's eye. The manticore screams in pain, and when it looks up, it sees Ruda and the knights charging at it. Ruda orders his knights to go after the manticore with full strength, and a fierce battle ensues as they try to cut down the stubborn beast. The manticore is not threatened by their presence, as it calls the humans insects. Suddenly, the manticore hears Ian's voice in the distance, calling it the B word while scolding it for acting all desperate. The manticore yells at Ian, telling him to shut his mouth, but Ian teases it, saying it is all bark and no bite. This triggers the manticore, and it starts rushing toward Ian's position, but the moment it gets into range, Mani comes in. He activates his magic, bringing forth flowers to grab the manticore by the leg, restraining its movements. Ruda then orders his men to do their thing, and they all pour flammable liquid on the manticore from all directions. The manticore still believes that there is nothing that will harm it, but it realizes how screwed it is when Ian activates his fire magic. This burns the manticore so much that it only leaves flame dust. After defeating the beast, the townspeople come together to thank the knights for saving them, and Ruda replies that they only did what was right. Seeing that Ian is standing behind and no one is addressing him, the crow teases him, asking if he is seriously getting left behind, but Ian tells Oberon to shut its mouth. Ian figures out that the people are scared because they just witnessed him turn the manticore into a fireball. Suddenly, the father and son who were saved appear behind Ian, thanking him for saving them, and Ian nervously acknowledges their thanks. Deep down, Ian didn't even do it for appreciation, but he still doesn't mind. Ruta then walks up to him, commending him for being impressive because they were only able to capture the manticore thanks to him. Ian doesn't want to take the thanks as he reveals that he only did as Mani told him. However, Ruta urges him to raise his head high because it is rare to see someone with such incredible skill have such a humble personality. Ruta believes that someone like Ian might later become a great figure who puts the nobles to shame. Just then, a bunch of knights show up, asking Ruta and Ian if they were the ones who defeated the manticore. Ruta confirms this and asks them who they are. The knights apologize for the late introduction and reveal that they are knights belonging to the castle. Ian is surprised to hear this, and the knights suggest that they come with them to the castle because Count Katina has requested to see them. When they finally arrive at the castle, Katina welcomes them with the best meal while commending them for being able to stand against the terrifying monster. Katina teases Ruta, saying it would have been nice if the castle had knights like him. Katina also tells Mani that he should rest assured that no one would lay a hand on the forest where he lives. Katina then turns to Ian, saying he's heard stories about him from his niece. Ian is totally carried away by the delicious food he is eating that he didn't even know that Katina was calling for him until Oberon calls his attention to this. Ian finally turns to the Count, apologizing for his attitude, revealing that the food was so delicious that he couldn't hear him speak. Katina tells Ian that he heard about how he took care of his niece, and he has decided to give him a golden magic scroll. Apparently, the moment the scroll is torn in half, it unleashes its effect. Ian is blown away by the scroll as he can feel the high quality of every single sentence in the scroll. Katina asks Ian if he likes it because he intentionally prepared it for him. Ian assures him that he likes it, while thanking him for the precious gift. Katina assures him that the scroll is nothing compared to the fact that he brought Lucy back. Just then, Katina snaps his fingers and Lucy makes her way into the room wearing a beautiful dress, but a hat that looks like a traffic cone. Ian cannot believe his eyes, and he starts wondering where the lady got such an ugly hat from. Lucy smiles at Ian, asking him if he's been fine because it's been a while. Ian assures her that he's good, and Ruta cuts in, saying he finally understands that the two are not siblings, but lovers. Ian tries to clear the air, saying it is not what Ruta thinks, and Katina tells Ian that he has a proposal for him. Ian asks him what it is, and Katina urges Ian to lend him his strength so that they can fight together to avenge what happened to Lucy. Ian finally understands why Katina gave him the golden scroll. Nonetheless, Ian doesn't think it is a big deal since he doesn't have to risk his life fighting on the battlefield. He can basically just provide moderate support with magic as he did with the manticore, and if things go well, he might get double the rewards from both Katina and Lucy. In every way, Ian doesn't see it as a bad deal, and he tells the Count that if they need his help, he's willing to give it. 3 days later, Ruta prepares to leave, and Lucy thanks him for everything that he did. Surprisingly, the number of knights in Ruta's team has gone down because Katina pulled some of them away with money. Ruta turns to Ian thanking him for everything, and Ian says the same too. Ruta tells Ian that when he has the time, he should visit Trifar Island, promising that he is going to introduce him to some mysteries that he might be interested in. Ian is surprised, since this is the first time he has heard of such an island. Ruta mentions that it is an island floating in the Coral Sea. Ruta tells him that if he says he's come to see Salvador, everyone will surely welcome him. Ian immediately asks him if this is his real name, and Ruta says it is finally time to tell him. Ruta mentions that his actual name is Salvador, of the Orcus family. Lucy hears this, and she is stunned because she knows something important that Ian doesn't. She asks Salvador if he is the same person from the White Wolves family, and Salvador commends her for remembering his old name. Ian asks Lucy what the White Wolves mean, and Lucy is shocked that Ian doesn't know. Apparently, the White Wolf mercenary group was a group that flourished as mercenaries directly under the former emperor, and its leader at the time was granted the prestigious title of Swordmaster. Lucy then explains that the person standing in front of them at that moment is a freaking swordmaster. Instead of freaking out or jumping around about this, Ian just stands there with zero interest. Even Lucy scolds him, telling him to give off a bit of reaction since he is standing in front of a legend, but Ian couldn't care less, and Salvador isn't even surprised since he knows the type of person Ian is. Once everything is cleared up, Salvador tells him that it is time for him to leave, and Mani tells Ian to give his greeting to Eritis. Dietrich holds Ian tight as he doesn't want to leave, but Ian lets him know that this is not goodbye. Ian and Salvador shake hands as they say goodbye to each other, and Ian assures him that he is going to come to Trifar Island once things settle down. After this, Katina gathers his army in preparation to go after the bandit Graham, who murdered his sister. Deep down, Katina doesn't think the whole situation is bad, because by using Lucy as a shield to secure her lands and having her marry one of his vassals, Katina aims to take full control of the Terrian territory. As he stands in front of his men, Katina motivates them, telling them of how he plans to pass judgment on Grime, the usurper. His men roar his name in agreement, and with this, it is evident that Katina has the support of his men. Later on at the military camp, the soldiers notice that Ian is boiling the spoon, and they assume that he is making spoon soup. Ian cannot believe just how dull these people are because he is basically sterilizing the spoon. Lucy asks him what sterilizing means, and he replies that it is some kind of mystery, since Lucy wouldn't even get it if he took his time to explain it. Before he knows it, the other soldiers show up asking him to boil meat with the spoon, but Ian yells at them, telling them that he is not making soup. Soon afterward, Lucy tells Ian that she has been thinking about the reward that she promised him, and Ian has even forgotten about it all. Lucy mentions that she was thinking of giving him gold, but from the look of things, he already has more than enough. This is why she thought of something else to make him happy, and what she came up with is the magic sword, Anorishil. She reveals that the sword was a gift to the first Baron Tarian from the fairies. She reveals that the tale goes that the Baron fell in love with a fairy, and taking up the sword, he became the savior of the fairy realm. Lucy is narrating the tale with great excitement, but Ian is not really impressed. Ian asks Lucy why her family couldn't use the sword to attain greater heights rather than remain a barony. Lucy then reveals that this was 400 years ago, and it appears that Anorishil is buried in the first Baron's grave. Ian is shocked to hear this, and Lucy continues by saying they would have to dig up the Baron's grave to get it. Ian cannot believe that Lucy plans to dig up something that the Baron sealed just to give it to someone else. Ian is blown away by the lack of morals, and when he finally speaks up, he tells Lucy that it appears that the sword is pretty valuable, so it would be better if she uses it for her family. In fact, he says it would be better if they just continue to use it to boast forever. Lucy cuts in by saying she might not have gained anything back yet, but she has gained the right to fight, and for this, she is grateful. This is basically why she is willing to give Ian the valuable sword as a token of her gratitude. Lucy stands up in anger, calling Ian an idiot for not being able to read the room, and she rushes off. Ian is left wondering if he took things too far, and just then Katina shows up, telling Ian that he has a favor to ask him. Later on, some mercenaries are seen extorting a villager for his things, and suddenly they spot Oberon on a tree branch. This immediately tells them that Ian is in the area, and before they know it, Oberon announces Ian's arrival. They are still freaking out about a talking crow when Ian appears on the scene with a look of disgust on his face. It turns out that Ian is there because of the favor that Katina asked of him. Apparently, Katina told Ian that he wants him to stop the misdeeds of the mercenaries in the town. Ian had suggested that he use the knights instead, since they would do a better job, but Katina let him know that this is not possible, since the knights are the mercenaries' comrades. They often cover up their crimes and even look the other way, and this is done to maintain the morale of the mercenaries. Katina says he might have tolerated their looting for a while, but they are currently in his niece's territory. Katina tells Ian that if he gives the mercenaries a warning, they should start watching their behavior. To follow up on the request is why Ian tracked down the mercenaries to scold them. Just at the mere sight of him, the mercenaries are already shaking. He threatens to finish them off as punishment, but the mercenaries beg him, telling him that it won't happen again. After this, the mercenaries became such good guys that they were even scared of coming outside, since they believed that Ian would kill them if he saw them. Katina and Lucy were overjoyed when they heard the news, but suddenly, another thing happened. Katina learns from his knight that to the usurpers, their army is no longer a threat. Ian is surprised to hear this because they have the larger force, and the knight replies that this is because their army is completely harmless. He explains that if the army had looted the territory, the people of the territory would have made a fuss for Grime to stop the invasion. However, thanks to their peaceful march, Grime has bought time to gather his forces. In addition, since their army cannot move as they wish, morale has dropped significantly. Ian realizes that it has truly become a complicated situation, and the knight asks Katina if he is going to permit looting now. Katina turns to Ian, asking if there is no way forward to this, and he replies that there might be a way. Katina and Lucy immediately start begging Ian to tell them the way forward. Later on, Ian is seen at a farmer's house. After being disturbed by the crow's noise, the farmer steps out, and Ian asks him if he is the owner of the wheat field. The farmer arrogantly asks Ian who he is, and the mercenaries standing behind Ian introduce him to the man. The man immediately falls to his knees, begging Ian to forgive him because he didn't know that he was standing in front of such a famous person. Ian then tells the farmer that the wheat in the field is already bad, and the farmer asks him what he means by this. Ian immediately puts on an act, revealing that evil has eaten deep into the land. He says the soul of the first baron of the land whose land has been unjustly taken is furious. With fear creeping through the farmer's body, he asks Ian what he should do about this. Ian continues with the act and then tells the farmer that Lucy must inherit the throne of her ancestors for the anger of the gods to subside. After delivering this fake message that he made look so real, Ian runs off to another farm to do the same. With this, everyone starts believing that the territory will perish because of Grime. Before Ian knows it, the rumor starts spreading everywhere, and the people start to show their distrust toward Graham. They all come together to ask for Lucy's ascension to escape the calamity. Thanks to this rumor, the Count's army was able to raise its morale, and they headed toward Graham's location. Sometime later, some mercenaries show up to voice their displeasure to Katina, telling him that they have no wish to stand on an honorable battlefield. Katina asks them what they mean by this, and they tell him that Ian is spreading rumors that the town is cursed. They fear that Ian is inviting a curse upon them, and if they stand around a mage like Ian, their honor will be trashed. Ian defends himself, saying a curse is nothing more than a lie, and he can't believe that they are taking the rumors he spreads seriously. The knights argue that they can't believe anything a mage says because he is definitely planning to deceive them. Ian realizes that the knights are basically forcing everything. At the same time, he knows that this is a big problem since the knights are considered the stars of war. He can see the reaction on Katina's face, too. It is evident that without knights, a war cannot be properly fought. In the end, Katina will have no choice but to listen to the knights, and Ian already knows that there is no need for him to be there. Ian then speaks up, telling Katina that he doesn't have to worry about him, and if his presence is causing trouble, he will simply leave. As he steps out of the tent, he leaves a warning, telling the Count not to even think of asking for his help in the future, regardless of what happens. As Ian leaves the camp after his fallout with the knights, Lucy rushes out to apologize to him on behalf of the rude knights. She also blames her uncle, Katina, for being too cowardly to even speak up for Ian. Ian's mood instantly lightens because of Lucy's sincere apology, and he assures her that he isn't angry with them anymore. Lucy is relieved to hear this as Ian tells her that he doesn't mind leaving the battlefield because there's no mystery to be found in a place full of corpses. However, Lucy still feels bad because Ian will lose his chance to earn any merit if he leaves. To comfort her, Ian pats Lucy on the head, telling her merit is useless to him as long as he can get his hands on the sword she promised to give him. Lucy is happy to hear this and vows to make sure Ian gets the magic sword as promised. She also offers to marry him if the reward isn't enough, but Ian quickly rejects the offer. Lucy continues to insist that Ian marry her, but Ian refuses to have any part in her delusion. A few days later, Graham arrives at the battlefield with his army, but gets a little uneasy when he sees that Katina has about 400 soldiers. Graham's aide teases him about getting cold feet, but Graham confidently denies it. His expression suddenly darkens when he thinks about Lucy joining hands with the Count to go against him. However, Graham believes that her struggles are useless because at the end of the day, she will still end up in the palm of his hand. He is confident that he has everything under control, especially since he hired a powerful Black Knight from the east. As the Count's army comes into view, Graham's aide realizes their numbers are far beyond the original estimate, but Graham remains unfazed. Raising his voice for all to hear, he vows to cut down anyone reckless enough to draw a sword against him. With that, he orders his army to charge forward, and before long, the two sides begin to clash in a fierce battle. Meanwhile, on the other side, Katina, Lucy, and some knights hold the rear, observing the battle from a distance. Ian is also beside them, even though he already swore to never assist them. While observing the fight, Decade points out that their soldiers seem to have the upper hand, and Ian agrees with him. Ian believes they can win since they have more numbers than Grimes' army. However, that belief instantly vanishes when he notices the powerful Black Knight on Grimes' side breezing through the battlefield. Decade informs Ian that the Black Knight is from the Eastern Empire. Recognizing the distinctive black armor, Ian identifies him as the Fourth Knight, leaving him to wonder what someone of his rank is doing so far from the cold Eastern Empire, which is famous for its long winters. Watching the Black Knight swiftly carve through the battlefield, cutting down the Count's soldiers with ease, Ian begins to panic. As the knight moves with incredible speed, expertly picking off soldiers one after another, Ian fears the battle may already be lost. Judging by the situation, he worries they may soon have no choice but to retreat. Ian then asks Decade what would happen if the center line were breached. Decade explains that if the center collapses, those stationed at the rear will be the next targets. The revelation sends a wave of anxiety through everyone gathered around the Count. Decade further warns that Grimes' army will ignore fleeing soldiers and instead charge directly toward the Count once the center line falls. Katina grows agitated upon hearing this and begins cursing his men for their incompetence as he angrily yells at them while his aide tries in vain to calm him down. Overcome with panic, Katina orders Decade to head to the front lines and eliminate the Black Knight. Ian is stunned by the command and immediately opposes it because Decade is the only person in the camp who has ever treated him with kindness, and Ian cannot bear the thought of him being sent to his death. Convinced that Decade is no match for the Black Knight, Ian fears he will return in a body bag, so he quickly pleads with Katina to reconsider. However, before Katina can respond, Decade accepts the order. Ian questions his decision, but Decade simply insists that it is his duty to obey the Count's commands. Ian isn't pleased to hear this as he tries to reason with Decade that the Black Knight is a monster. He also suggests that the best course of action is to retreat with the Count instead of choosing certain death. But Decade refuses to back down and insists that he must fulfill his oath as a knight. Although Ian knows this is exactly how a knight should be, as a modern person, willingly jumping into death like that is just plain foolish to him. Refusing to let a good man die, Ian tries to convince him to change his mind, but the calm expression on Decade's face tells him that Decade already knows he's about to die, yet he's willing to do so for his so-called honor. Ian painfully questions why good men like Decade are the ones who are always sacrificed. Just then, Silg, the knight guarding the center, approaches them to announce that they have already lost the battle. He also reveals his decision to retreat with the Count before Grimes' army catches up to them. Ian can't believe how shameless Silg is to spew such cowardly nonsense when Decade was just about to give up his life. Decade then begs Ian to help Silg escort Katina and Lucy off the battlefield. Ian tries to protest, but Decade refuses to give him the chance to, insisting that he will stay behind to buy them time to escape. Without waiting for a response, Decade charges into the front lines while Ian helplessly watches from behind, wondering if it's okay to just let him go, knowing he's about to die. Ian wonders why they have to sacrifice a good man just for a war started by some brainless fools. While he's still deep in thought, Lucy calls out to Ian, telling him to hurry and retreat with the Count. However, Ian ignores her and suddenly mounts his horse to catch up to Decade before he becomes the sacrificial lamb. Before leaving, Ian tells Lucy to leave with the cowardly scumbag Silg. When Lucy asks what he plans to do, Ian explains that he will stay back with Decade to take down the enemy. Lucy isn't too pleased to hear this, but before she can say anything, Ian gallops off, telling her to make sure they make it out of this chaos alive. By the time Lucy recovers from the shock, she tries to call him back, but Ian charges into the front line with an unwavering determination. Ian soon catches up to Decade, who asks him why he came, and Ian replies that he came to help them lure the enemies away. Ian then tells him to protect the Count, but Decade doesn't think Ian can handle the enemies alone. However, Ian reassures him that something like that is a piece of cake for him because he's a mage. Just from Ian's expression alone, Decade feels reassured and immediately concludes that Ian isn't just bluffing. As Graham's army charges forward, Decade turns his horse around to head back to the rear, leaving the front lines in Ian's hands. Ian also wishes him luck on the trip back, and as he watches them ride off into the distance, an arrow suddenly shoots past his face, almost hitting his bird Oberon. The arrow narrowly misses Ian and pierces a tree behind him. Oberon frantically caws as it takes a moment to recover from the near-death experience until Ian orders the bird to shut its trap. Ian then rides into the forest, deciding to lure Graham and his army into the forest, where it's easier to deal with them. Shortly afterward, the soldiers realize Ian has vanished and begin searching for him. Just as they start looking around in confusion, he suddenly appears before them, calmly muttering some unrecognizable words. They are still wondering what he's saying when Ian rips apart the scroll in his hands, and a powerful bolt of lightning strikes every single one of them down. Ian heaves a sigh of relief that his plan worked out, and he was able to take the soldiers down with a single strike. Ian then starts thinking about Decade and hopes he was able to catch up with the Count's group. Fearing they might be in danger, Ian quickly sets off to search for them. Unbeknownst to him, his lightning missed the Black Knight, who hid behind a tree, quietly watching him. Elsewhere, Lucy and the Count unfortunately run into another group of Grimes' men. Before they can react, the enemy captain orders his men to open fire on them, eliminating all the Count's guards. Even Silg is caught in the crossfire, but though injured, he manages to eliminate several enemy soldiers before another arrow strikes him, and he finally falls in battle. Lucy and the Count watch helplessly as the last person on their side falls to his death. Pleased with himself, the enemy captain smugly taunts Katina, telling him to surrender quietly. Suddenly, Silg, who should have been dead, slowly rises to his feet. Stunned by the sight, the captain mistakes him for a monster and quickly fires another arrow at him, but the arrow misses Silg and instead strikes Katina. Silg and Lucy immediately rush to the Count's side, but unfortunately he's already fatally wounded. He tries to say his last words but only manages to call out Lucy's name before giving up the ghost. Lucy weeps bitterly as she clutches Katina's corpse. Meanwhile, the enemy captain curses his luck, remembering that Grime had ordered the Count to be captured alive. With that no longer possible, he decides to take Lucy prisoner instead and orders his men to seize her. Lucy can only freeze on the spot, trembling as the soldiers close in on her. Silg tries to protect her, but he's immediately cut down, and Lucy can only watch in horror as she's left alone at their mercy. As the soldiers close in, Lucy silently prays for a miracle because she doesn't want to be handed back to a tyrant like Graham. Just when she's silently hoping Ian would come to her aid, darkness suddenly engulfs the forest, plunging it into pitch blackness. From the shadows, Ian pulls a terrified Lucy onto his horse and rides off. Lucy instantly calms down when she realizes who he is, even without seeing his face. Ian then asks her about the Count, and she sadly reveals that he has already been eliminated. Ian isn't happy to hear this, but quickly puts it aside to check on Lucy, asking if she's hurt. Lucy reassures him that she's fine, and thanks him for saving her on time, after which she asks about Decade's whereabouts. Ian tells her that Decade was supposed to catch up with the Count, but since he didn't, something must have delayed him. Saddened by the news, Lucy grows concerned, but Ian quickly reassures her that Decade is definitely safe. For the time being, he tells her they need to make their way to the river. When she asks why, he explains that they have to find a way to shake the Black Knight, who is pursuing them. The revelation leaves Lucy stunned, as she had no idea the Black Knight was following them so closely. By the time Ian and Lucy cross over to the other side of the river, the Black Knight has already caught up to them. Ian racks his brain for ideas to escape because he fears he might not be a match if they go up against each other. The Black Knight then advises Ian to hand Lucy over obediently, but Ian angrily asks why he's working for a piece of shit like Graham. However, the Black Knight doesn't care who he's working for as long as he gets paid. Stunned to hear this, Lucy tearfully tells the Black Knight that Graham killed her parents and tried to steal her territory, so a scumbag like him deserves death. Ian also supports Lucy and asks the Knight if a terrible person like Graham is worth fighting for, but the Knight simply lets them know that he's just doing exactly what he was paid to do. He then warns Ian to hand Lucy over and walk away, but Ian refuses to budge and quietly orders the Black Knight's horse to bounce. As if hypnotized, the horse suddenly begins to gallop around, throwing the Black Knight off and running into the forest, leaving him behind. The Black Knight questions what kind of trick Ian pulled, but Ian ignores him and begins to manipulate the water beneath the Knight's feet. Before the Black Knight can figure out what is happening, the water builds up, engulfing him. He tries to flee, but is instantly knocked out. Afterwards, Ian goes over to check whether the Black Knight is dead. He carefully closes in, fearing that the Knight might just be pretending to be passed out just to suddenly stab him out of nowhere. After preparing himself mentally, Ian decides to take the risk. Besides, he couldn't bear to pass up on the Black Knight's shiny black armor. Ian then carefully takes off his helmet, only to realize that the Black Knight was actually a woman all along. Lucy and Ian are both left completely shocked by this revelation. Later that night, after stripping the Black Knight's armor, Ian ties her up to a tree. When she finally wakes up to see her armor propped up beside them, the girl yells at Ian, who casually explains that he disarmed her because he couldn't trust her. The Black Knight is left flustered that she has to face her enemy while looking so vulnerable. Lucy taunts her for dressing up as a man to fight, which only infuriates the Knight. Ian is surprised that Lucy can be this savage, but he notes that her mockery makes sense because in this world, cross-dressing is strictly forbidden. It is basically grounds for execution if a woman is caught cross-dressing as a man. Lucy, on the other hand, continues to boldly mock the Knight, telling her that everyone will soon find out that the famous Black Knight is just a woman in disguise. Dreading the consequences, the girl begs them to protect her honor, but Lucy scoffs at her as she reminds her that she's just a rogue knight who only loves money. The Black Knight is enraged when Lucy tells her that she's actually worse than bandits. Ian quickly steps in before the situation between them escalates any further. He tries to get Lucy to calm down, but Lucy angrily denies getting worked up. However, her anger vanishes the moment Ian places his hand on hers, telling her to get some rest and leave everything else to him. Lucy then gently apologizes to him before quietly heading back to her tent. The moment she leaves, Ian heaves a sigh of relief as he tells the Knight that they were making a big fuss out of nothing. However, she tells him that her cross-dressing as a man is a big deal and points out that Ian doesn't see it as anything because he's not a believer in the Church of the Sun God. Ian reveals that he's actually a believer, which surprises the girl as she can't understand why he doesn't find it strange that a woman is cross-dressing as a man. To her surprise, Ian lets her know that there's nothing wrong with it, and even mentions that men also cross-dress as women. The Black Knight is left completely stunned to hear this, as she wonders why a man would do that when he already has so many privileges as a dude. Ian tells her it's useful for cosplay, though Lucy has no idea what he's talking about. Nevertheless, Ian encourages her not to let her spirit sink just because her disguise has been blown. However, the girl can't help but feel a little let down, but she still commends Ian for being an incredibly skilled and weird mage. Afterwards, she begs him to treat her like a knight by untying her, but Ian refuses because he doesn't trust her. Determined to convince him, she firmly swears on her honor as a knight that she will not attack him. However, Ian reminds her that he doesn't even know her identity, so he can't trust her. The girl immediately tells him that her name is Barenka from the House of Metz. According to Barenka, she's from the County of Winds, a barren winterland on the eastern edge of the Empire. Barenka was her father's eldest daughter, so he trained her as a knight from a very young age to become the heir. However, after he died, her mother made her younger brother the successor instead. Barenka fought to reclaim her position as heir, but she lost the challenge and was finally exiled. Ian wonders why she isn't in prison instead of roaming around. Barenka reveals that she actually ran away, and Ian asks what would happen if she were captured. Barenka confidently declares that they would never catch her because she's heading to the kingdom of Roland. Ian is puzzled why she would choose Roland, and Barenka tells him that it's because her father served there as a knight during his youth. She explains that they will surely take her in because she is his daughter. Ian can't believe how naive she seems to think her father's old workplace would give her any face just because she's his daughter. He then asks her why she was cross-dressing as a man. But when Barenka hesitates to respond, Ian figures it must be because she's into women. Barenka hurriedly denies the accusation as she yells that it's because the Empire discriminates against female knights. Apparently, her father told her that they were savages and warned her to be very careful. Barenka then reveals that her helmet is actually enchanted to mimic her father's voice, so that makes it easier to disguise herself as a man. Ian is stunned to hear this as he wonders if the helmet is truly enchanted with magic. Barenka assures him that it is, pointing out that the armor and helmet belonged to her father. Ian then decides to check it out, but asks Barenka for permission first, and she allows him to do as he pleases. After carefully studying the helmet, Ian doesn't find any signs of enchantment. Suddenly, the system informs him that he cannot learn the skill used on the helmet yet, and advises him to witness another mystery to acquire the necessary skills. However, the next moment, the system unlocks another achievement, telling Ian that he has unlocked a new mystery and gained an additional 50 skill points. Ian is excited that he has already racked up a total of 550 points, so he scans through his skills to see if there are any good ones to upgrade. After searching, he finds a necromancy skill at 30% progress. Ian is left in complete shock as he wonders if this is the new mystery he just witnessed when he was staring intently at the helmet. He then informs Barenka that her helmet is actually haunted and not enchanted by magic. By dawn, Ian has decided to free Barenka, but the moment Lucy arrives, the two girls shoot lasers at each other, leaving Ian feeling uneasy. Ian hopes the girls can get along and not start bickering from where they left off last night. Barenka then asks Ian if it's okay for her to keep using her father's helmet, but Ian doesn't know because he hasn't figured out necromancy yet. However, he advises her to use the helmet less because there's no telling if it will be a problem in the long run. Barenka sincerely thanks Ian, but Lucy isn't too happy and suggests tying her back to the tree. But Ian reassures her that Barenka already swore not to harm them, but Lucy feels that her word isn't trustworthy. Ian admits that he also has his doubts about her, but Barenka assures them that she'll keep her word because Ian spared her life even though she tried to kill them for money. She then begs them to wipe the slate clean and forget every unpleasant thing that transpired between them. Ian notes that she's just beating about the bush instead of just saying she wants to make up. Even so, he agrees to Barenka's terms while Lucy doesn't seem ready to let go of old grudges. However, Barenka isn't about to beg her to change her mind and simply tells her that she will keep fighting as a knight no matter what Lucy thinks of her. Lucy then reconsiders her stance for a moment and figures that if Ian accepts Barenka's loyalty, she will become a valuable ally for him. In order not to get upstaged, Lucy decides to call a temporary truce and apologizes to Barenka for being an insufferable bitch yesterday. Barenka also apologizes to her while Ian wonders what has suddenly gotten into Lucy, who is usually so prickly. Barenka then expresses her gratitude to them, vowing to repay Ian's life-saving debt. When Ian asks how she plans to repay him, Barenka casually says she has no choice but to offer him her body. Ian finds the offer ridiculous, but before he can say anything, Barenka suddenly bends the knee as if pledging loyalty to him. Ian is taken aback by the gesture as he frantically asks her what she's trying to do. Ian is surprised when Barenka humbly offers to be his sword until her debt is fully repaid. As the air between them grows tense, Lucy looks at Ian wondering what his decision would be. On the other hand, Ian is puzzled by the whole thing and reminds Barenka that she doesn't even know him, but Barenka tells him that he's a mage. Confused, Ian asks if she knows where he's even going before giving herself to him like that. But Barenka doesn't care and vows that she will go wherever he goes until her debt to him is repaid. Ian quietly considers her offer and soon figures that having his own personal knight isn't a bad idea since mages are awful at handling close combat. He fears that he'd surely lose his head if someone were to suddenly jump him, but with a powerful knight like Barenka by his side, blocking such attacks should be a piece of cake. After weighing the advantages of having her on his side, Ian immediately accepts her offer, welcoming her to the team. At daybreak, Ian orders Oberon to search for the scattered soldiers. As the bird flies overhead, a couple of the soldiers spot it and realize it is a signal from Ian. Some of them are reluctant to heed his call, but one of the soldiers frightens the others by warning that Ian will place a curse on anyone who refuses to return. Shortly afterwards, about 300 remaining soldiers manage to return to Ian's side, but they were terrified when they saw the Black Knight. They're even more surprised that she's a woman, but Barenka quickly denies she's the so-called Black Knight. She introduces herself properly, but the soldiers insist that she's definitely the Black Knight. Barenka continues to feign ignorance. And to defend her honor, she challenges one of them to a duel. The dude accepts the challenge, but in exchange, he asks that she reveal the truth if he defeats her. A few seconds later, Barenka wipes the floor clean with him, leaving him half dead. This makes the others certain that she's the Black Knight, but they don't actually say it because they're too terrified of her. After the duel, the soldiers accepted Barenka into their ranks out of fear of being thrashed. Ian is happy that things went more smoothly than he expected, thanks to Barenka's shamelessness, using force to suppress everyone's suspicions. Just then, Decade returns with his men, and Ian is relieved to see him alive. Lucy is also over the moon when she sees Decade, who expresses his gladness that she's also safe. After exchanging pleasantries, Ian tries to tell him about the Count's death, but Decade reveals he already knew about it. He then asks what Ian and Lucy plan to do next, but Ian throws the question right back to him. Decade tells them that he still wants to bring the tyrant Grime down, but the decision is not his to make. Ian already knows how Decade feels, because backing down now would make them seem like sore losers and could cost them their chance for revenge. Even so, Ian believes that only Lucy has the right to decide whether they should retreat or launch another attack. Lucy is taken aback when Decade suddenly pays his respects to her as their Baroness, asking her to permit them to fight. He points out that they have enough soldiers to launch another attack. Lucy quickly turns to Ian for help, but he urges her to just do whatever she truly wants to do. Ian's words immediately remind Lucy about her dead parents, which in turn rekindles her thirst for revenge against Graham. After considering it for a while, Lucy decisively declares that she wants to exile Graham and take back her father's territory. Decade and Ian are pleased to hear this, especially Ian, who stares at Lucy like a proud dad. Moved by Lucy's determination, Decade riles up the soldiers, announcing that their Baroness has ordered them to fight back. Soon afterwards, the soldiers begin making preparations for the upcoming battle. Decade privately approaches Ian to ask if he'll assist them. Ian assures him that he was already planning to join them. Decade is excited to hear this and then apologizes to Ian on behalf of the knights who insulted him previously, but Ian tells him to forget about the past. Decade is glad that Ian is willing to let go of past grudges, but the knights don't feel the same. They immediately protest, telling Decade that they can definitely win the battle without help from a mage. Decade reminds them that they just lost a battle only recently, but the knights insist on fighting alone, citing that using Ian's power will just make them the laughingstock of the kingdom. They argue that they must preserve their dignity as knights, but Ian sternly advises them to leave if they have a problem with him. The knights are pissed to hear this, but Ian ignores their petty feelings and informs them that his team doesn't need cowards playing politics right before a war. He then sternly warns them to get lost and stay out of his way if they don't plan on following orders. The knights are spooked by Ian's terrifying aura, but one of them continues mouthing off, claiming that war is a knight's domain. He proudly claims that Ian can't do anything without them, and the others soon join to mock Ian for trying to lecture them in their own field. However, Ian reminds them that they couldn't even protect their count, but have the nerve to act high and mighty in front of him. Ian mercilessly roasts them where it hurts most, destroying their pride by calling them incompetent fools. Seeing how infuriated the knights are, Decade tries to step in, but Ian angrily cuts him off. To show them his superiority, Ian causes the sky to darken, unleashing a powerful wind that almost makes the knights crap their pants. Seeing how weak they look, Ian can't believe that a bunch of cowards like them call themselves knights. As he turns to leave, he announces that they will launch a counterattack against Graham at dusk and urges anyone who stands with him to follow. At dusk, Ian and the remaining soldiers march toward the battlefield, determined to fight one final battle against Graham and settle the conflict once and for all. When they finally arrive at the battlefield, Graham is confused to see his precious Black Knight on the opposing side. Graham is enraged by this new development and can't believe the knight betrayed him. He's even more pissed at Lucy for continuing to go against him at every turn. As soon as the battle horn sounds, the two armies charge at each other with unwavering determination. Graham remains at the rear, yelling orders at his soldiers to fight properly. Lucy's forces are quickly overwhelmed, and Graham's army grows increasingly cocky until Barenka steps onto the battlefield. She swiftly cuts through the enemy ranks, leaving a trail of corpses in her wake and turning the tide of the battle. Meanwhile, Graham watches helplessly as his men fall like dominoes. Fearing defeat, he desperately searches for a way to turn the tide and finally sets his sights on Lucy. Convinced that capturing her will force the others to surrender, he charges toward her without hesitation. However, before he can reach his target, the battlefield is suddenly swallowed by total darkness due to Ian's shadow arts. As a pitch-black curtain envelops the field, the darkness dances with delight that Ian called them out to play. The soldiers immediately panic, unable to see anything around them. Chaos soon erupts as they drop their weapons and flee in every direction. Grime flies into a rage when he overhears one of his soldiers ordering a retreat. He shouts at them to stop acting on their own and commands them to stay calm and return to their posts. But by the time the darkness begins to fade, it is already too late. When the shadows finally disappear completely, Grime realizes that every one of his soldiers has abandoned him. Before he can figure out what to do next, Barenka appears behind him and presses her blade against his neck, ordering him to drop his weapon. With no way out, Grime reluctantly complies, bringing his reign of terror to an end. Lucy can hardly believe they actually won, so she asks Ian once again to make sure she's not dreaming. A smile spreads across Ian's face as he happily congratulates her on taking back her land. Immediately after the battle, the knights begin pillaging and searching the corpses for jewels and other valuables. Ian is irritated as he watches them celebrate their newfound spoils. The sight leads him to conclude that in this world humans fight not for honor but simply to claim the riches left behind on the battlefield. To Ian, everything the living do seems driven by their endless greed, which convinces him that it's the very reason medieval people die young. Nevertheless, Ian isn't happy despite their victory because he didn't find what he came for. Apparently, he only agreed to help them, hoping it would help him find the mystery of death. But in the end, he didn't find any traces. This makes Ian question whether learning necromancy is the right path after all. Since he has made little progress, he briefly considers using one of the fallen corpses to practice necromancy. However, the idea of playing Victor Frankenstein unsettles him and, more importantly, he worries that his master, Eridas, would scold him if she discovered he was tampering with the dead. In the end, he abandons the idea, but finds himself reflecting on what it truly means to be a mage. Although he has encountered countless mysteries and achieved more than he ever imagined, he still feels that something is missing. He begins to wonder whether he has been training the right way, or if becoming a true mage requires a far more drastic approach. But no matter how much he thinks about it, Ian can't seem to see a way forward. He's still deep in thought when Oberon perches on his shoulder and begins pecking his face. This snaps Ian back to reality, and as he pets the bird, he decides to focus on gaining more experience as a mage rather than looking for a shortcut. A few minutes later, Lucy arrives, and Ian asks her if she's got everything settled. Lucy tells him that she has, and reveals that she also recovered the remaining assets previously seized by Grime. Ian is relieved to hear that, after which he asks if she's seen Decade around. Lucy points in Decade's direction, where he's seen discussing with some knights. Shortly after the victory celebration, Decade and the knights depart for the barony. Before leaving, Decade bids Ian farewell and expresses his hope that they will meet again someday. After their goodbyes, he sincerely thanks Ian for everything he's done. Soon afterward, Grime is publicly executed in accordance with the laws of this world as the people who have long suffered under his rule erupt in cheers. They also celebrate their new baroness, Lucy, who cannot help but bask in her newfound popularity. Ian, on the other hand, shows little interest in the ceremony. Noticing this, Lucy playfully teases him for not being as popular with the people, but Ian doesn't care. After all, people aren't exactly eager to praise a mage capable of placing curses on them. A short while later, Lucy tells Ian to get ready because they will be heading out soon. Confused, he asks what she means, and Lucy reminds him of the present she promised to give him. Only then does Ian remember that she had promised him a magic sword. A few hours later, Lucy is seen leading Ian and the others across a dangerous cliff. The whole journey leaves Ian unsettled because a single misstep will definitely send him plunging to his death. He can't help but suspect Lucy brought him here just to assassinate him so that she doesn't have to give him the magic sword she promised. Terrified by the thought, Ian asks Lucy if they are actually on the right path. Lucy happily assures him that they're almost there, which instantly puts his mind at ease. Besides, he believes an airhead like Lucy could never come up with such an elaborate scheme. Barenka is also uneasy about the journey, as she points out that it was a terrible idea to follow them for free. She then threatens to take 1 silver coin off her debt to Ian as payment. Ian can't believe how shameless she was when she was the one who was eager to follow them. Just then, Oberon returns from scouting the area and informs Ian that there are humans up ahead, a revelation that leaves Ian uneasy. When they finally arrive at their destination, Barenka tells them that the situation is dire. She had secretly scouted the area and found over 10 men standing outside. Lucy is stunned to hear this as Barenka reveals that there might even be up to 40 people in total, judging by the number of tents she saw earlier. Ian suspects they're grave robbers, and from their numbers he can tell they're a professional group with inside info. Lucy then excitedly suggests recklessly attacking the grave robbers, an idea Ian finds extremely dumb. However, Lucy insists they should attack, but Barenka lets her know that they're outnumbered by the grave robbers, so charging in recklessly means certain death. Lucy, however, believes that the robbers are no match for Barenka, but Barenka reminds her that she's not some superhuman monster. Lucy then asks Ian for his input, but Ian is too deep in thought to respond. After calling him several more times, Ian finally snaps out of it and tells her that he could probably give it a shot. Remembering how Ian defeated her with water magic last time, Barenka wonders what kind of devastating spell he plans to use this time. However, Ian assures her that he has no intention of doing anything too harsh. When Lucy asks what he has in mind, Ian excitedly reveals that he plans to give them a little scare since they are near a Tarian graveyard. That night, while standing guard outside the tomb, one of the robbers notices his companion scribbling something on the ground and asks what he is doing. The man explains that he is drawing holy symbols, and when asked why, he says they are meant to ward off ghosts. The other robber says he feels uneasy about the job and begins telling the legend surrounding the Tarian tomb. According to the tale, the first baron of the ancient Tarian noble family had a romantic relationship with the fairy queen. Before they can finish discussing the legend, the atmosphere suddenly becomes eerie. The guards freeze in fear when they notice a strange, gooey purple liquid spreading across the ground. Meanwhile, Ian manipulates the liquid from behind the scenes, casting a shadow spell to animate it into a ghost. The guards instantly freeze in fear as the massive blob's voice echoes through the forest, making things worse. As the scary blob closes in on them, the guards are too terrified to move an inch, and their torches suddenly go out, making it more terrifying. Thinking it's the ghost of the Baron coming after them for disturbing his tomb, the terrified robbers flee in fear, screaming, while the religious dude from earlier prays to his deity to save him. A few minutes later, the so-called ghost vanishes, and the dude is happy that his prayer was answered. He's still celebrating when a blade is suddenly pressed against his neck as Barenka advises him to surrender quietly, promising to spare his life. The dude immediately begins to weep, begging her to have mercy on him. He then tells her that he doesn't even know who the mage inside the tomb is. Barenka then calls on Ian, informing him that a mage is inside, and Ian isn't too excited to hear this news. Meanwhile, inside the tomb, an explosion suddenly erupts, and in the midst of it is an old dude named Inlian Kate, a mage from the Imperial Magic University. Inlian stares at the mess before him, which was caused by his failed attempt to open the massive door standing in his way. Apparently, the Fairy Queen cast a barrier spell to keep people out of Tarian's grave, but Inlian didn't expect the wall to be this thick and impossible to break into. He then turns around, searching for the person who went to look for another way into Tarian's tomb. Inlian suddenly senses a strange aura, but before he can determine its source, another man named Mud Baron, an illegitimate child of the Dibel family, interrupts him and asks whether he has managed to break through the barrier. Rather than answering, Inlian reveals that they have a bigger problem. He informs Mud Baron that intruders have entered the tomb. Speaking of Inlian, he was an eccentric mage who once taught at Drenheim Magic University. However, he wasn't satisfied with that profession and only wanted the research grants provided by the university. Fed up with the monotonous teaching life, Inlian craved finding a new path and wanted to go on a mysterious journey aiming to uncover legends. One day, while drowning his sorrows in booze at a tavern, he overheard some men talking about someone who called himself Lord of Inquiry. Apparently, this so-called Lord of Inquiry was a youngster who went around causing quite a stir under the guise of uncovering mysteries. His true identity was the wayward bastard son of the Dibel family, and his target was the Tarian barony, where he intended to find a treasure left by the late Baron. After hearing about this news in the tavern, Inlian took a leave of absence from school. He was so excited at the thought of finding a legendary magic sword. Eager for the adventure, he immediately went to find Mud and struck a deal with him, which was how he ended up in his current situation. Back in the present, Inlian lets Mud know that the intruders aren't just ordinary people, but mages. Elsewhere, Ian and the others are seen in the hallway making their way toward the main tomb. Lucy, who's supposed to be the one leading them, is totally creeped out by the eerie atmosphere. Barenka warns everyone to stay alert since they don't know what kind of danger to expect. On the other hand, the mystery of the dark urges Ian to play with them, but Ian doesn't even remember when they became playmates. The darkness then tells him to lie down like he always does and make those funny snoring sounds. Ian is left in complete shock as he realizes that the mystery of darkness plays around with him whenever he's sleeping at night. Lucy suddenly spooks Oberon when she jumps into Ian's arms, screaming that she heard something. Ian figures it must be the grave robbers, but Lucy insists it's a monster's voice. After scanning their surroundings, Ian hears absolutely nothing. Barenka tells them that they're just tense because it's their first time in a cave. Since Barenka looks like she knows what she's talking about, Lucy asks her if she knows what it was. Barenka proudly explains that they're just fairies mimicking human voices, but Ian rolls his eyes at her because she's just talking trash. However, Lucy and her aide instantly eat it up, leaving Ian in shock that they're that dumb. To clear their ignorance, Ian explains that what they heard is just an echo. The mystery of the wind also laughs at them for being ignorant and wishes someone else could scream so it can make their voice ring out through the cave. Ian wants to explain it to them, but remembers that he's in a fantasy world and not the modern world, so explaining the science behind echoes might be a stretch. Even so, he tries to break it down for them by telling them that what they heard isn't some fairy's voice, but the mystery of the wind. As soon as he says this, Ian acquires a new skill called atmospheric magic, which can manipulate sound and control air vibrations. At least Lucy understands when Ian explains that it is the work of a mystery. To further prove his point, he commands the wind to stop carrying sound. However, the mystery of the wind remains stubborn, questioning why Ian wants it to stop spreading their voices. Frustrated by its refusal, Ian decides to try a different approach. He asks the wind to play with him, reasoning that mysteries seem to enjoy having fun. Fortunately, his strategy works perfectly, and the mystery of the wind immediately agrees to his request. Ian then blows into the air, causing the wind to vanish completely and leaving the cave in absolute silence. Ian then makes a sound, but it doesn't echo, leaving everyone amazed. Suddenly, Ian warns them to stay alert, revealing that there are enemies nearby. As they anxiously wait for the enemies to reveal themselves, the ground suddenly begins to tremble beneath them. Ian assumes it must be the work of the mage who entered the tomb with the grave robbers. He immediately commands the earth to be still, and as the shaking stops, Inlian appears before them alongside Mud and several of the robbers. Inlian praises Ian's magic, while Ian carefully studies the group, wondering who Mud is. Inlian then asks if Ian is a geomancer, but Ian explains that although he has studied the subject, he is not a geomancer himself. When Ian asks who he is, Inlian introduces himself before asking for Ian's identity in return. The moment Ian reveals that he's Ian Eridus Raven, Inlian immediately recognizes the name Eridus. When he asks if Ian is referring to the famous fire mage, Eridus, Ian confirms that she is actually his master. Inlian becomes visibly uneasy upon hearing this, as he never expected to encounter Eridus's disciple here. An awkward silence falls between them until Mud Baron calls out to Inlian, asking whether he intends to back out of their agreement. From their exchange, Ian quickly realizes that Mud appears to be the one calling the shots. Inlian then firmly declares that Baroness Tarian's treasure belongs to them before preparing to attack with wind magic. However, before he can complete his spell, Ian swiftly orders Barenka to charge. Without hesitation, Barenka rushes forward, ready to strike. Seeing how fast Barenka is, Inlian abruptly stops the spell to beg for his dear life. Meanwhile, Mud abandons him and immediately orders his men to move out. As the robbers scurry out of the cave, Ian engulfs the cave in darkness, leaving them unable to see anything. However, Inlian immediately casts a powerful light spell, overriding Ian's shadow spell. Ian realizes that Inlian is actually using photon arts, a magic that manipulates the mysteries of light and brightness. With the brightness piercing through their eyes, Ian fears they might be toast if this keeps up because photon arts are the exact opposite of shadow arts. He then calls out to Barenka and orders her to close her eyes. Though confused, Barenka does as she's told, and Ian instructs her to focus on the voice of the wind. However, she hesitates, reminding him that she's not a mage. Ian then casts a wind orchestra magic, channeling it towards Barenka to help her feel the flow of the wind with her entire body. Speaking of wind orchestra, it is a technique that can help one perceive their positions and those around through sound echoes. Basically, it's a medieval-style magic created by applying modern sonar and the sharper one's intuition, the more accurately they can detect the echoes. Before long, Barenka begins to hear and feel the sound of the wind, and even without her sight, she's able to detect Inlian's exact location. Barenka then grips her sword and swiftly charges directly towards Inlian and takes him down with a single strike, ending his light attack against them. Mud, who witnessed the whole thing, is left in complete shock, wondering how Barenka was able to accurately swing her sword with her eyes closed. Afterwards, Ian plunges the cave into darkness again, but Mud isn't fazed. He tells his men to remain calm, reassuring them that they have a mage on their side. He then orders them to attack despite the darkness, but as the robbers charge forward, Ian moves through the shadows, knocking them out with his staff. Mud begins to feel uneasy as he tries to figure out what is happening. Unable to handle not knowing, he hurriedly flees, ordering his men to retreat. Inlian is stunned to hear this and frantically begs Mud to take him along, but unfortunately, before anyone can come to his rescue, Barenka and Lucy capture him. Lucy sternly advises him to surrender and promises to treat him as a prisoner of war. As soon as he recognizes her as Baroness Tarian, Inlian loses all hope because he's toast, knowing he basically trespassed on her property. He immediately surrenders without hesitation. A short while later, Ian has Inlian lead them to the main tomb. Along the way, Inlian praises Ian's remarkable magic abilities and asks if he learned them from Eridus. Ian confirms that he did and asks whether Inlian knows his master. Inlian replies that they have never met personally, but he has crossed paths with her several times at the Magic Academy. Inlian then asks him about the magic he used at the end, and Ian reveals that it was wind magic. Inlian is surprised as he wonders how Ian managed to guide Barenka with her eyes closed. Ian explains that he got the idea from cave echoes, but Inlian thought it was just fairies playing tricks with human voices. After thinking about it, he suddenly figures it must be because Ian asked the fairies to whisper the directions to Barenka. This convinces Ian that this old dude might actually be dumber than Lucy. Before he can explain further, Inlian excitedly shakes his hand, praising him for pulling off such an amazing feat like talking to the fairies. Lucy points out that Ian can also use the rare shadow arts. Inlian is completely stunned when he hears this because shadow arts are considered a rare form of magic. Ian is baffled by Inlian's reaction and wonders whether the old man failed to notice him controlling darkness earlier. Barenka then hands Ian a note that Mud dropped earlier while fleeing. Upon reading it, Ian discovers that it is a declaration of revenge, with Mud vowing that he will never forget the humiliation he suffered today. Inlian confirms that the note belongs to Mud. When Ian asks whether Mud is a baron, Inlian confirms that he is. Apparently, Mud is known as the Mud Baron, the illegitimate son of Count Dibel. According to Inlian, Mud was abandoned by Count Dibel and now he's a grave robber. Ian is trying to digest the information when Inlian asks him about the contents of the note because his eyes are failing him due to old age. However, Ian is too lazy to translate and simply brushes him off. A few moments later, they finally reach the massive door of the main tomb, which Inlian was trying to break down earlier. Ian then asks him if the late Baron's tomb is behind the massive door. Inlian confirms this and explains that they've tried everything to open the door, but nothing worked. Ian wonders whether to use the mystery of the earth to trigger an earthquake, but he doubts the mystery would cooperate with him. Besides, if it does, they might end up being buried alive inside the cave, so he quickly drops the idea. Lucy's aide tells them not to worry, revealing that Lucy should be able to open the door without any hassle. Lucy is surprised to hear this, as the aide shows her where it is written in the legend that a fairy liaison can open the door. However, when Lucy asks him what a fairy liaison means, the aide completely zones out because the book didn't exactly define it. Ian grows frustrated, but just as he's about to give up, Inlian points out that there is an inscription carved into the door. Unfortunately, he cannot identify the language, but Lucy recognizes the words immediately. Ian asks if she can read it, and she confirms it before reciting the inscription, which translates to a simple promise that the speaker will never forget their friendship. The moment the final words leave her lips, the inscription begins to glow as the massive door slowly swings open. With that, Ian finally confirms that Lucy is indeed a descendant of the Tarian family, and Lucy proudly embraces her heritage without hesitation. After entering the tomb, Ian asks her what language the inscription is written in. Lucy explains that it is the language of the fairies, though she doesn't actually understand its meaning. She reveals that her father taught her how to read it, so she simply memorized the words. A few moments later, the group comes across the late Baron's coffin, and Ian notices a weird stone resting on top of it. Curious, Lucy eagerly rushes over to examine it, but Inlian quickly pulls her back, warning her not to touch it. When Ian asks why, Inlian reluctantly reveals that the stone is the tomb of the Fairy Queen. Ian also senses that something terrible will happen if they touch the stone. He then asks Inlian why the Fairy Queen's tomb is sitting on top of the Baron's coffin. Inlian explains that it must be to protect the Baron's body even in death to prevent anyone from disturbing his rest. Although Lucy made the story of the Baron and the Fairy Queen sound like some Romeo and Juliet love story, Ian feels it seems more like an obsessive thriller. In his imagination, the Fairy Queen definitely forced the Baron, and because of her obsession, she refuses to let him go even in death. Lucy's voice soon snaps him back to reality, telling him to come over. When he goes over to her, she shows him several treasures, probably left behind by the Baron. There, Lucy finally finds the magic sword she promised Ian, stuck into a rock beside the pile of treasures. Apparently, the sword is called a Norishil, a magic sword of the sun and moon. Ian is a bit disappointed because according to the legend he read, he was expecting it to be a bit bigger, but in reality, it looks smaller than expected. However, for some unknown reason, Ian can't seem to take his eyes off the sword as if it were calling to his soul. Lucy then urges him to pull out the sword. As soon as he grips the hilt, the sword comes out of the stone easily. Ian focuses his senses to feel the power of the sword, making him realize it's enchanted with some kind of magic. After examining it closely, he concludes that the sword radiates both a warm and a cold aura because it was forged from the power of the sun and the moon. To test its true strength, Ian orders it to awaken, and the sword immediately responds, bursting to life with a fiery glow, leaving everyone amazed. Lucy asks how he did it, and Ian explains that he just channeled the mystery of fire into the sword since it was made with the power of the sun and moon. Lucy excitedly praises him, but Inlian lets him know that he used it wrongly. Ian admits that Inlian is right since he used the mystery of fire instead of the mystery of the sun. Inlian then reassures him that he'll figure out the proper way to use the sword once he gets used to it. Ian assures Inlian that he will certainly research more about it. This is because Ian hasn't learned how to channel grand mysteries like the sun and moon. However, he believes he should be able to use such powers once he gets stronger. On the other hand, Lucy is pleased that Ian seems to like her gift. And when she asks him what he thinks, Ian confirms that he loves it, after which he thanks her for letting him have the sword. Lucy is over the moon to hear this and feels relieved that she was able to pay him back for everything he did for her. Baranka then suggests they head back out because she's a little hungry. A few moments later, the group finally makes their way out of the cave, where Ian asks Lucy when she started studying fairy language. Lucy reveals that she has been doing it since she was young because her father made it compulsory for everyone in the Tarian family. That night, the group decides to camp outside the cave. While everyone is fast asleep, Inlian suddenly shakes Ian awake, telling him he senses a strange presence lurking outside. Ian reaches out with his own senses and detects it as well, but neither of them can identify what it is. However, Inlian believes that the mysterious thing seems to be targeting them. Shortly after, Ian heads out with Inlian and Barenka to check it out, but they come up empty. However, Inlian insists he sensed a mysterious presence earlier. Ian wonders if the grave robbers returned, but Inlian believes it was closer to a mystery than a human presence. Ian is taken aback to hear this, and just then Oberon returns from scanning the area. Ian asks if it found anything, and Oberon replies that it did. The bird tells them that it found tiny human-like beings lurking in the bushes. At first, Ian finds this hard to believe, but still asks Oberon where he found them. Oberon uses one of its wings to point the direction of the tiny humans, while Ian activates his shadow vision to find them through the darkness. But after searching for a while, he still doesn't see anything out of the ordinary. Just as he's about to give up, Ian suddenly freezes when he sees the tiny fairies hiding inside the bushes, leaving him wondering what they are.
The little creatures seemed more afraid than hostile, making Ian wonder what they were doing. A scream for help suddenly rings out, spooking Oberon, prompting the bird to flap around restlessly. Ian then orders the bird to calm down, and when it does, Oberon points in another direction, telling Ian that there's a monster there. When Ian looks up, it turns out to be a giant owl minding its business. On the other hand, Lucy is terrified and quickly darts behind Barenka, who lets her know the so-called monster is just a bird. Ian recognizes the bird as a great horned owl and figures the fairies must have been terrified of it, which is why they looked so fearful. He then orders the owl to come down, but it doesn't respond. Ian stretches out his staff as he promises not to hurt it as long as it comes down. The owl finally obeys and perches on Ian's staff. Ian then feeds it a few crumbs, and when Lucy asks what he gave it, Ian explains that they were leftovers from dinner.
Inlian is amazed that Ian can also communicate with animals. Ian then walks toward the fairies to show them that the owl is harmless, but the moment it slowly turns its head toward them in an eerie manner, the tiny fairies nearly burst into tears from fright. Ian quickly reassures them that they have nothing to fear. Gathering their courage, the fairies explain that they have come to see him. When Ian asks why, one of them blurts out, begging him to return their sword. Before Ian can respond, the owl suddenly takes flight with a loud hoot, startling the fairies and sending them into a panic. Meanwhile, Lucy is mesmerized by the cute fairies and tells Ian to give them the sword no matter the reason. Ian orders her to shut her trap, after which he pulls out the magic sword, asking if it's the same one they want. The fairies reply that it is, explaining that they can't weave any fabric without the sword. Ian is confused to hear this, as he wonders how exactly a sword can be used to weave fabric. However, the fairies explain that they use the power of the sun and moon from the sword to weave fabric from jewel beetle silk. Apparently, the fabric they weave with this method is called shinmora. Ian is even more confused because he has never heard that name before. In contrast, Inlian and Lucy instantly recognize it as fairy silk, which is very expensive. Even so, Ian has never heard about fairy silk, so Inlian explains that it is a silk woven by fairies. Apparently, this silk is a magical fabric that stays cool in summer and warm in winter. According to Inlian, fairy silk is so extraordinarily rare that it is considered priceless. Lucy adds that it is so difficult to obtain that even an imperial duke would struggle to acquire a single piece. However, Ian's reaction to all this makes it clear he doesn't care for the so-called silk of the gods. Thinking he finally understands their plight, the fairies firmly let him know that they need the sword to create their fabric. They also point out that the sword belongs to them because it was crafted by their queen and her artisans. After making their point, they buzz around like mosquitoes in Ian's ear, begging him to give them back the sword. But Ian bluntly refuses, leaving the fairies in complete shock. Ian then casually asks them why they think the sword belongs to them. One of the fairies explains that it's because they've been the ones using it. Ian tells them that it actually belongs to Lucy's family, and since Lucy gifted it to him, the sword technically belongs to him. The fairy is devastated when she finally realizes that Ian makes sense. Just then, another regal fairy steps in to mediate and orders the other fairies to calm down. It turns out she's their current queen, and she scolds them for being rude to their benefactor's descendants. But the fairy from earlier lets her know that Ian isn't the descendant of their benefactor. However, this only infuriates her as she clearly explains that Tarian's descendant already transferred ownership of the sword to Ian, so it belongs to him. The fairy tries to protest, but the queen pays her no mind. Instead, she immediately turns to Ian and apologizes for her subordinate's rude behavior toward him. Ian tells her not to bother about it, after which the queen questions which one of them is Baroness Tarian's descendant. Ian points to Lucy, and the moment the queen sets her eyes on her, she can instantly tell that Lucy is Tarian's descendant because of the golden aura around her. She then sincerely begs Ian to lend them his magic sword in exchange for some fairy silk. The moment Lucy hears the offer, her eyes light up and she immediately begins calculating the fortune a single piece of the fabric could fetch. But to everyone's shock, Ian instantly rejects the offer. When Lucy asks him why, Ian makes it clear that he couldn't care less for some measly silk. He lets them know he'd rather spend his time researching the sword than making money. Lucy concludes that Ian is indeed a dedicated mage, but she still feels he's insane for turning down such a good offer. After all, in this world, mages are practically considered to be lunatics. Inlian, who understands what it means to crave a mysterious adventure, finds Ian's dedication commendable. The queen then decides to make another offer. She asks Ian to share the sword's power with them, and in exchange they will help him with his research and also give him some fairy silk. Ian wonders how he's supposed to share the power, so the queen anxiously explains that they can draw out some of the sword's power and transfer it into a runestone in their village. Ian considers the proposal for a moment and figures that it isn't a bad deal since he can't tap into the full potential of the sword yet. He admits that he doesn't mind if the sword loses a bit of its edge as long as he can gain the power of the sun and moon. After giving it some thought, he accepts the queen's offer. However, when she asks to borrow the sword so the fairies can take it back to their village and draw out its power, Ian flatly refuses, insisting that he will accompany them. Shortly after, Ian follows the fairies to their village, and upon reaching the entrance, the queen asks him to swear an oath before entering. Curious, Ian asks what kind of oath she means. The queen tells him to swear upon every mystery he seeks that he will never bring harm to their home. The moment she speaks those words, the mysteries immediately begin to stir up around Ian. Witnessing their reaction, Ian realizes that the fairies are indeed born with an innate connection to the mysteries. He then accepts the oath, without hesitation, and once it is sworn, the fairies welcome him into their hidden village. Upon entering the fairy village, Ian is notified that he has uncovered a new mystery, earning him an additional 50 points for the discovery. As a reward, he acquires a new skill known as space-time arts. The moment the skill activates, Ian is able to see the space-time barrier surrounding the fairy village. It turns out that the barrier is a dangerous form of an alternate dimension that cannot be entered without permission. Ian then asks the queen if the mystery of space-time arts is active within the village. Caught off guard by the question, the queen wonders how he could possibly know about it. Ian casually claims it was only a hunch, prompting the queen to remark that he has an exceptionally sharp intuition. Ian credits his keen intuition to the excellent training he received from his master. Apparently, Eridus had warned him to abandon the study of space-time arts immediately if it ever proved too much for him to handle. The reason for the warning was the existence of terrifying space-time mages who are essentially chronomancers, capable of shaping the future to suit their own desires. Ian reasons that if those chronomancers want him to become one of them in the future, they'll likely leave him alone to do as he pleases. However, if they oppose that future, they'll stop at nothing to prevent it, even if it means taking his life. That is why Eridus warned him to back off from space-time arts the moment the chronomancers begin to interfere. Afterward, the queen asks Ian to hand over the magic sword. Once he does, the two head to the location of the runestone. Upon arriving, Ian asks the fairy workers to explain the mechanism used to transfer the sword's mana into the runestone. One male fairy smugly dismisses him, claiming that even if they explained it, Ian wouldn't understand. Unfazed, Ian simply asks for the simplified version. Determined to prove Ian's ignorance, the fairy decides to test him first. He asks Ian to name a number smaller than 2, and Ian immediately answers with 1. The fairy then follows up by asking for a number smaller than 1, but Ian effortlessly responds with 0. The answer leaves the fairy and everyone nearby completely stunned. They are even more astonished that a human could talk, let alone solve such a tough problem. While Ian can only wonder why the fairies treat basic arithmetic as though it were brain surgery. He figures they would probably drop dead from shock if he were to mention negative numbers. Just then, the queen interrupts their small talk and urges everyone to proceed with setting up the runestones for the mana transfer. The following day after the transfer, Ian finally leaves the fairy village. In exchange for letting the fairies use about 33% of the magic sword's power, Ian agreed to receive a monthly supply of fairy silk. Also, to ensure he can handle the magic sword properly, the fairies promised to help Ian research the ancient records of the fairies. On top of that, the queen also gave him 2 bracelets made from fairy silk as a parting gift, but Ian has no idea what he's supposed to do with the bracelets. Shortly after heading out, he runs into Berenka and Lucy and decides to give them the fairy silk bracelets. Lucy is over the moon when she receives the gift, while Berenka can't help but question if Ian is truly letting them keep something so precious. Ian assures her that they can keep it as a gift for all they've been through with him. He tells them to consider the bracelets as a souvenir from him. Lucy and Berenka are so moved by the gesture. After putting on the bracelets, Lucy admires how beautiful they are, while Berenka, still surprised that Ian is letting them keep something so precious, decides to wear hers as a hair tie instead. Berenka then thanks Ian for the gift. Seeing how happy the girls are, Ian can't help but feel good, admitting that giving the bracelets to them was totally worth it. When Ian finally returns to the Tarian castle, he's approached by some middle-aged dude who frantically begs him to save his baron. Caught off guard by the drama queen, Ian quickly backs away, telling the man to chill, but the man refuses to let Ian go. To stop him from making a fuss, Lucy quickly calls for Barenka, who immediately barges into the room, ready for battle. Her abrupt entrance startles both Ian and the dramatic man, causing them to freeze on the spot for a moment before the man finally lets Ian go. Shortly afterward, the dramatic man apologizes for being rude before introducing himself as Garadine, a civil official serving the family of Debosi. Ian has no idea who the Debosi family is, so Lucy explains that Debosi is a territory located very far away from the Tarian territory, which has absolutely no connections to them. Ian considers this for a moment before asking what Garadine meant by saving the Baron. Garadine explains that Baron Debosi is currently suffering from a mysterious illness with no cure. He reveals that they have tried every medicine rumored to be effective, but none of them has had any effect on the Baron's condition. Even the priest's healing prayers proved useless. According to Garadine, they were on the verge of giving up when he overheard people talking about Ian's mysterious power and how he had used holy arts to bring a knight back to life in Count Katina's territory. After hearing those rumors, Garadine decided to seek Ian's help. Ian then asks if Garadine wants him to determine what caused the Baron to collapse. Garadine confirms that he does, explaining that he believes the Baron has been cursed. However, Lucy finds it difficult to believe that someone deliberately made the Baron ill. Garadine then earnestly begs Ian to examine the Baron's condition himself, but Ian hesitates to agree because he didn't go to medical school, so he has no knowledge of medicine. Ian reasons that he may be helpless if the illness is really something serious. However, the thought that the illness might have something to do with the mysteries excites him. Ian reasons that he might even be lucky enough to learn a new spell. Considering the fact that he has nothing else to do in the Tarian territory and checking on the Baron won't take up his time, Ian decides to accept Garadine's invitation. The following day, while sipping tea outside and chilling, Ian notices a couple of farmers tilling the land below. The scene immediately reminded him of his parents. Looking back on how he used to live, Ian still can't believe he's a mage now instead of farming with his parents. Watching the farmers work, Ian can't help but feel that life is truly unpredictable. Ian's thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Barenka arrives, asking what he's doing outside. Ian is a bit taken aback by how stunningly different she looks without her black armor. Barenka soon notices Ian is staring at her, so she asks him if there's something on her face. Flustered, Ian quickly shifts his gaze, brushing off her concern. Barenka then asks Ian if he plans to return to Tarian after visiting Baron Debosi. However, Ian replies that he doesn't, revealing that he intends to continue traveling farther north once his visit is over. This surprises Barenka, and when Ian notices the change in her demeanor, he asks if something is bothering her. Barenka admits that she's simply a little surprised. When Ian asks what she means, she reveals that she had assumed he liked Lucy. Ian almost gags when he hears this, as he struggles to understand how she could have reached such a conclusion. Barenka explains that she thought Ian wouldn't choose to travel so far away since he had feelings for Lucy. Ian can't believe that's what she assumed, but Barenka insists it wasn't just her imagination, pointing out that he and Lucy seemed really close. Ian explains that it's only because Lucy has a naturally friendly personality. Slightly caught off guard by his response, Barenka asks if they really are just friends. Ian confirms it without the slightest hesitation, leaving Barenka with nothing more to say. Even so, Ian can't shake the feeling that she's still holding something back. However, Barenka simply excuses herself while Ian lets her go without saying anything more. But just before leaving, Barenka decides to give him a piece of advice. She warns him that if he keeps being nice to every woman he meets, he's going to regret it someday. Unfortunately, Ian has no clue what she means. Without explaining further, Barenka takes her leave while reminding him to make sure to explain things properly to Lucy. However, Ian has no clue what she wants him to explain. After completing his preparations, the time for Ian's departure drew near. Before leaving the territory, the first thing he wanted to do was apologize to Lucy. He planned to visit Baron Debosi, after which he would continue searching for mysteries and eventually return to the university. Before setting off, Ian also stopped by to bid Professor Inlian farewell. The professor invited him to visit the university again someday and even offered him a position as an assistant professor, but Ian flat out rejected the offer. With that done, Ian went to see Lucy as the day of his departure approached. Upon meeting him, Lucy excitedly shares her latest business idea to make clothes out of the monthly supply of fairy silk and sell them. She excitedly tells him that they could make a fortune from this. Ian immediately gives her the go-ahead, but Lucy tells him that she doesn't have any artisans who can handle such a precious fabric. She suggests he bring back a few on his way back from Debosi after treating the Baron. Ian is caught off guard by the idea. Seeing the expression on his face, Lucy asks him if her suggestion will inconvenience him in any way. But to her shock, Ian lets her know that he won't be returning to Tarion anytime soon. Lucy asks him if he isn't coming back right after checking on Baron Dobasi. Ian informs her that he's actually heading north, but Lucy points out that they're already in the north, prompting Ian to clarify that he's heading further north beyond the Imperial territory. Still clinging to hope, Lucy asks when he plans to return to Tarion. Ian considers it for a moment before admitting that he honestly has no idea. He then explains that he intends to continue traveling in search of mysteries and will likely return in 3 or 4 years, mainly to check on the stockpile of fairy silk. Lucy's expression instantly darkens when she hears this, especially after hearing that Ian planned to return only to inspect the fairy silk. Startled by her sudden change in mood, Ian quickly asks if she's all right. However, Lucy simply apologizes and quietly asks him to leave, leaving Ian completely bewildered. From that day on, Lucy started avoiding Ian no matter how many times he tried to check on her. After an entire week without seeing Lucy, Ian begins to grow worried, especially since he has already finished all of his preparations in the Tarion territory. He feels that lingering any longer will only waste his precious time, yet he still can't understand why Lucy has been acting so strangely when they aren't even saying goodbye forever. Recalling how she looked after their conversation a week ago, Ian feels she looked like she couldn't accept the fact that he was leaving. Even so, Ian can't figure out what he did wrong. In his mind, he was simply setting off on a journey and planned to eventually return. Unable to make sense of it, he racks his brain, trying to figure out where he had gone wrong. Just then, Berenka arrives with Garadine, who asks whether they can finally depart today. Ian falls silent for a moment before turning his gaze toward Lucy's chambers. He had wanted to say a proper farewell to her before leaving, but since things have turned out this way, he finally makes up his mind to leave without seeing her, as he tells Garadine that they can now set out. Meanwhile, Lucy remains alone in her room, heartbroken as she quietly stares at the fairy silk bracelet Ian had given her. Shortly after, Lucy's maid comes to inform her of Ian's arrival, telling her that he's departing now. Lucy simply thanks her for the information, and after the maid leaves, she crouches on the ground, wondering what is wrong with her while tugging at the bracelet. Lucy admits that all she feels is loneliness whenever she thinks of Ian. She notes that the relationship between them was simply contractual at first because he was just helping her escape darkness. However, after spending time together with him, she began to grow greedy for more. Lucy also admits that she doesn't just want Ian's magic, but she also wants him by her side. She then blames herself for thinking Ian felt the same way as she did. Now that everything has become clear, Lucy doesn't even know how to look him in the eye anymore. Lucy fears Ian will probably be disgusted if she tells him how she really feels. Lucy admits that she's afraid of being rejected. Even so, she doesn't want to keep avoiding him like this and fears she might never see him again if she keeps hesitating. Lucy questions whether it's really okay for Ian to leave without even saying goodbye. Unable to let that happen, she quickly rushes out of her chambers, yelling that she won't let things end this way. Fortunately, Lucy rushes out into the hallway just before Ian takes his leave. Ian is a bit taken aback to finally see her after trying for so long. Lucy wonders why he's still there, and Ian explains that Berenka told him it would be rude to leave without saying goodbye, so he came back. Lucy is quite happy to hear this, while Ian asks how she's feeling now. Lucy guiltily explains that she wasn't actually sick but just frustrated. Ian wonders why she would be frustrated, so Lucy explains that it's because he's leaving so soon. Ian cluelessly asks what she means, reminding her that his job in the Tarion territory is already done. Lucy tells him that she knows exactly why she's so frustrated, especially because Ian is too ready to just end things according to their contract. Before Ian can say anything, Lucy suddenly grabs him, asking if he really has to leave. She also asks if his magic study is that important. Seeing the sad look on her face, Ian instantly concludes that Lucy must have grown quite attached to him. He then reassures her that he will certainly return as soon as possible and tells her to do whatever she wants with the fairy silk. Hearing this, Lucy lets go of his hand and, after a brief moment of silence, she suddenly grabs his face. Before Ian can even figure out what is happening, Lucy suddenly kisses him, after which she reminds him to keep his promise. She also threatens to raise an army and hunt him down if he tries to run off somewhere else. Though flustered by the sudden emotional roller coaster, Ian happily agrees to remember his promise. They then wrap themselves in each other's embrace, saying their final farewells. Soon afterward, Ian departs with Berenka and Garadine. But he soon notices that there are more people following him than when he went to Tarion. The priest who previously followed Lucy also joined Ian on the journey. Ian didn't expect him to tag along, but the priest offered to help after hearing that Baron Dobasi's illness might be a result of a curse. Looking back on all the religious folks he has met so far, Ian admits that the religious ones in this world are surprisingly decent. Even so, he's still not sure about this priest who seemed sus when he mentioned that Ian's status will skyrocket if he manages to break the Baron's curse. Berenka soon snaps Ian back to reality, and when he asks what she wants, Berenka asks him if he properly said goodbye to Lucy. This immediately reminds Ian about Lucy's sudden kiss, which turns out to be his first kiss. Frustrated by the look on Ian's face, Barenka tells him that she needs to quickly pay him back and leave because she can't stand watching him and Lucy flirt with each other anymore. Before Ian can respond to the accusation, he suddenly senses something lurking around. While he's still trying to make sense of it, a soldier rushes over to inform him that there's a huge group of bandits ahead. Before Ian can figure out what he's talking about, they suddenly come face to face with a large group of armed men, blocking their path. The leader of the group smugly remarks on Ian's group as if they were prey for him. When Barenka demands to know who he is, the man introduces himself as Baron Damon. Ian is instantly drained when he hears that he has to deal with yet another Baron. Garradine racks his brain trying to recall where he has heard Damon's name before. The priest then asks Damon which territory he's from. Damon and his subordinates burst into laughter at the question as Damon announces that they're all standing on his territory. Meanwhile, Ian quietly watches the entire exchange from the back, regarding Damon and his lackeys as nothing more than a bunch of clowns. Baron then declares that they must pay a toll, claiming he was the one who built the road they're walking on. Garradine and the priest are stunned by the absurd demand, with the priest quickly pointing out that Damon isn't even a legitimate noble. At that point, Ian finally steps in, introducing himself as a wizard and a disciple of Eridus. However, Damon doesn't take him seriously. Instead, he casually calls over a young woman with voluminous red hair from his group and asks if she knows Ian, but the girl admits she's never heard of anyone by that name.